Good morning, everyone. For the record, this is the Judiciary and Public Safety Conference Committee, and we're dealing with Senate File 2673. We have an agenda of listening to our commissioners today and law enforcement agencies, and we will be on our agenda, like I said, Department of Corrections, Department of Public Safety will be before us. And to respect everyone's time, and this is for our members, we'll hold comments and questions for testifiers until all of the testimony is complete. So we're going to begin with Commissioner Schnell from our Department of Corrections. Commissioner Schnell, welcome and good morning.
Good morning, Chair Limmer, Chair Mariani, and members of the conference committee. My name is Paul Schnell, and I'm the Commissioner for the Minnesota Department of Corrections. I appreciate the opportunity to share some perspective on the Department of Corrections as it relates to Senate File 2673. Members, we all share the goal of ensuring the safety for Minnesota. The stakes for this endeavor are high this year, particularly with the increase in crime we've seen over the past 2 years. Our shared goal, and I believe there are many opportunities to partner around meaningful solutions to the problems we face. A comprehensive and smart response to crime is critical because over 95% of those who are today in our state's prisons are coming back to neighborhoods across our state. And our safety depends in part upon their successful reintegration into our society. Investing in and advancing what works, evidence-based, proven strategies and policies that create increased safety outcomes is at the center of how we approached our legislative requests this year. I know both the House and Senate positions on File 2673 have been thoughtfully developed. However, the impact of each position on Minnesota corrections system varies widely. The Senate position focuses on significantly increased levels of punishment. The bill spends millions of dollars on similar policies that have failed in the past, relying on what may politically sound good or feel good, but does not rely on the use of data in public safety policymaking. No doubt, we must double down to address violent crime and repeat offending. But the reality is that the work doesn't end with arrest, prosecution, and sanctioning. Yes, prison commitment serves the state's retributive and incapacitation objectives, but members, I ask that we not minimize the remaining objectives of rehabilitation and restoration. Given the reality that the vast majority of those in our prisons will come back to our communities, I urge your focus on investments in policy within the corrections system that will reduce repeat offending, which in the simplest terms means fewer victims. We cannot dismiss the fact that research tells us that 60% of all crime is committed by repeat offenders. Investing in Minnesota's corrections system, community supervision, and correctional facilities is not different than the critically needed investments in law enforcement. Mr. Chair and members, I'd like to talk about two areas of concern in the Senate bill and two areas of opportunity. First, while it's clearly the prerogative of the legislature to increase criminal sanctioning, we must be clear that the Senate's position will cause the state's prison and supervision costs to increase significantly. Based on the bill's provisions, in just a few years, the state will need to rent beds to meet population demands. In 10 years, the legislature will be tasked with spending upwards of $1 billion to build a new prison. And know that that $1 billion is the amount of building costs alone. Additional operational costs for that prison would be $50 million annually. For important context, this is happening at the very same time we sit on $600 million in deferred maintenance for the prisons we currently operate. As you may recall, the legislatively directed OLA audit on state safety and state correctional facilities conducted in the aftermath of the line of duty murder of Officer Joe Gom and the death of Officer Joe Parisi which found that housing more than one prisoner in the same cell makes our prisons less safe for both staff and our population. In addition, similar to the staffing crisis in law enforcement, there is a staffing crisis in our state prisons and many of our county jails. And the expansion of our prison population in this way will only exacerbate that crisis. Mr. Chair and members, the DOC will put in motion any of the policies you enact, but we trust that those policies will come with the requisite resources to fulfill our constitutional obligations, allow for safe staffing levels, and allow for the necessary rehabilitation opportunities to make Minnesota safer and for the restoration of victims and communities to the fullest extent possible. Next, the Senate position does not address the fundamental structural problems we have faced in correctional supervision funding for well over 30 years. While the Senate proposal does increase funding for community supervision, it does not address the underlying issues that created the current funding inequities and inefficiencies in the system. The recommendations that have been universally agreed upon by the counties, the 3 delivery systems, and other key partners, we believe, remains the solution. Members, you have a letter from the Association of Minnesota Counties, the Minnesota Association of Community Corrections Act Counties, the Minnesota Association of County Probation Officers, and the DOC. I note that the DOC is a partner in this effort. But it has been initiated and led by those who do the work and leaders at the local level. And I encourage you to read that letter and speak to your county representatives. Given the long-standing funding structural problem, we must revamp the funding formula, or a legislature in the very near future will be in the same position we are today. And counties supported by the DOC have produced a funding supervision formula that will apply to all the delivery systems, providing equity and county choice for what best fits local need, which reflects the priority Chair Limmer mentioned in his comments on Tuesday. Again, while the Senate position includes a base funding increase that rewards some county, it underfunds other, based on the choice of their delivery system. It does not create the needed structural fix. As I mentioned in my previous testimony before the Senate Finance Committee, a commissioner from a greater Minnesota county for which the DOC provides correctional supervision made this comment, and I quote, "The Senate may be mad at the DOC or the governor, but I don't understand why they're taking it out on us," end quote. I was not sure how to respond. In the Senate bill, the way supervision funding is divided, the counties do not receive equitable funding based on a formula. Subsequently, the perennial funding inequity we have sought to meaningfully address with the increased investment and policy fixes are once again shifted to the future. Members, I'd like to highlight how 2 requested appropriations that are critical to the operation of the DOC in accomplishing its core functions, without which our work to help Minnesotans stay safe will be negatively impacted. First, and most importantly, I urge your support and adoption of the DOC's statewide public safety data infrastructure proposal included in the House position. The funding request is $12 million in fiscal year 23 and $35 million in 24-25 biennium. I understand that often when legislators see numbers this large, it is common to assume that they are inflated, perhaps as a negotiating position, or perhaps an assumption is being made that the agency is padding its budget. Neither is true here. I can assure you that the DOC is in desperate need of these funds and will use them on critical projects to keep the agency working toward its core functions. I started my comments today noting the need for us to be smart on crime. Yet the DOC as an agency and the correction system generally is data rich but information poor. We collect huge amounts of data in our systems related to public safety, very often paper-based, that in the data's current form is nearly impossible to turn into useful and actionable information for the benefit of public, the criminal justice system, its professionals, or policymakers. DOC data and IT systems have been historically underfunded, and today we are antiquated beyond most any other state system. Commissioner Tomes and I recently spoke about the condition of the DOC Central Record System, and he noted his profound level of concern about the agency's systems and the critical need for investment. The requested data infrastructure investment accomplishes two critical goals. First, it replaces the critically antiquated DOC system with a modern, secure system to drive effective service delivery. And second, it creates a statewide data, public safety hub for correctional data for all counties and criminal justice systems across the state. To put the first goal even more significantly, the funding would allow us to bring our data information system up to modern standards. The DOC's base system is long overdue replacement, requiring us to spend time and resources on costly fixes. For a couple of examples, we have physical data servers that are upwards of 22 years old, unable to be updated and at risk of failure. And frequently, we use fax machines as routine communication tools. As you recall, the Office of the Legislative Auditor's report on safety and security in our prisons from 2020 found that the technology used by the DOC is far behind the standards that it would allow it to make data-driven decisions on all fronts, from security to programming to releases and supervision. We are grateful for your investments in the DOC over the years, but our agency budget is over 96% reliant on the general fund, and we must continue to look to you, the legislature, to help fund our technology needs. And that need is significant. And I want to go on record to share a couple of operational examples and highlight the critical need. The DOC's Risk Assessment and Community Notification Unit that oversees what risk level assignment is for individuals with sex offenses and provides assistance to community notification, has a pending request with Minute to update their 22-year-old obsolete technology and prevent failure of their application. The DOC's Field Services Unit has a request to update the Intensive Supervised Release Chronicles program designed to help collect and update information related to the state's highest risk clients in the community, which is a challenge because that system is over 20 years old. The DOC's Office of Special Investigations is relying on case tracking system that is over 25 years old and at risk of failing and becoming obsolete. And our Sentence Administration Unit is begging for updates to their 22-year-old server to desperately capture sentence obligations and ensure that human error does not cause harm. These are just a few of the examples that exist today. Chair and members, some of the servers and applications used by the DOC today are older than many of our newest staff. And it is time for the DOC to enter the 21st century. In your work as legislators, if you ask us for data regarding our core processes, it takes our staff enormous amounts of time to manually compile the data if they are able to do it at all. And the OLA, as I mentioned, recognized these gaps. While I understand this investment to be significant, it is far overdue, and the need for us to be data-driven is essential. Members, the history books may not remember you as the legislature that modernized the DOC's data and technology systems. But if you fund this request, you will bring our public safety data systems leaps and bounds into the 21st century, creating safer environment for our staff and for the people in our custody, and more responsive systems for our state's correctional staff, incarcerated population, and as a result, create safer, more data-informed public safety outcomes that benefits our state. The second portion of this data infrastructure request is to create a critical link and create better accountability for individuals who may become repeat offenders, and a tool to drive the overall safety of Minnesota. This request creates a statewide hub for correctional supervision data for all counties and criminal justice partners across Minnesota. The statewide data hub would provide a central repository and connect and inform law enforcement and county probation and supervision agents, as well as others in the system, on critical data in real time. With about 100,000 individuals on some level of correctional supervision across our state at any given time, Minnesota lacks information to connect all 87 counties, the judicial branch and law enforcement, and the Department of Correction. The need for this is critical. During the Senate Judiciary hearing in April, a woman shared the harrowing experience she and her daughter had as victims of a violent crime, a home invasion. She noted that she was shocked to find out that her perpetrator's probation agent was unaware that the person under her supervision had been arrested for the home invasion. She highlighted the lack of system communication and coordination and the need that exists to make sure that our systems are connected. These gaps have and will continue to create public safety risks in our communities. Today, when a warrant is issued on a non-compliant supervised releasee, it is entered into the National Warrant Database System. This is a passive system that gets triggered when law enforcement has contact with an individual and runs a check on them. We need a system that notifies law enforcement that a warrant has been issued for a person with system involvement. Again, because 60% of all crime is committed by repeat offenders, it only makes good sense that we mobilize all resources to swiftly get them into custody and get secure compliance. Importantly, in order for the DOC to build this capacity, we must receive the funding that I have mentioned. There is a small request. As I mentioned, the Department of Corrections is entirely funded by a state general fund, and we operate 11 state-owned correctional facilities and with a total of 336 buildings. Property insurance has increased by 54% in fiscal year 2020 and have continued to increase since then. As such, to avoid this increase in premium causing an agency deficit, we are requesting $650,000 annually to keep up with these rising costs. Just last month, a large storm caused extensive damage in the Faribault prison, and we are heavily relying on insurance. Members, the letter we submitted to you highlights a number of other smart justice proposals. That included in those are an investment to create stronger pathways from prison to employment. And just this morning on National Public Radio, there was a story that covered the fact that employers are increasingly looking to formerly system-involved people to come and work because of the needs being so great. We have to begin to look at this population not simply as the cause of a lot of our problems, but when they do what they need to do, that they become an opportunity for our state. We seek to provide body-worn cameras to our correctional officers and some of our intensive supervision agents across the state. We seek the creation of a family support unit that creates meaningful connections and is evidence-based, knowing that research shows that the family ties during incarceration significantly reduce reoffending by as much as 56%. Chair Limmer and other members over the years, Chair, I've heard you raise up that the core responsibility of government is to ensure the safety of its people. Fulfilling that responsibility is an obligation that must include recognition of the full complexity of the challenges we face. For the good of community safety, we must invest in necessary and proven solutions, and we must act now. I want to thank you and all the members for the opportunity to testify, Mr. Chair. I appreciate your consideration, and I will remain here for any questions that may come up. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Snell. We'll now move on to Commissioner John Harrington.
Mr. Chair, a housekeeping question?
Yes, Senator Biggett.
While the commissioner is coming up. I noticed on the agenda that we have the Department of Corrections, Department of Public Safety, and other organizations, but there is a department that is missing from being here today and testifying, and that's the Department of Human Rights. I'm wondering if they were invited. I mean, we certainly have the jurisdiction. There are certainly provisions in the bill that we should be discussing with them. So I'm just curious as to why that department and Commissioner Lucario was not included in a presentation today. Just out of curiosity.
Senator Bingham, in the Senate bill, there's no reference to the Human Rights Department. We invited individuals in this meeting to make comment on the existing Senate bill. And I believe they have sent correspondence to us. It might be in your files. But they certainly will have an opportunity to participate in other meetings, of course.
Mr. Chair? I mean, it's unfortunate that the Department of Human Rights doesn't have any provisions in the Senate bill, but they're an important aspect of our government and the executive branch, and just should be able to have a voice. So I'm not a chair of this conference committee, but I think it's important to have them come and discuss any of their supplemental requests. So maybe that should be a future consideration for a meeting, but thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Harrington, welcome to the committee. After introducing yourself, please proceed.
Senator Limmer, Chair Mariani, Chair Limmer, conferees, thank you very much. For the record, my name is John Harrington. I am the Commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Public Safety. I want to thank you for allowing me to testify on the provisions in this bill that are included in the Senate version of the Public Safety Omnibus bill. And we have also submitted a letter that contains some more detailed comments, which will also serve as a reference point. I'd like to start by making a relatively, by senatorial standards, brief opening statement and then get into the Senate provisions thereafter. My beginning point is to say, as you embark on crafting this omnibus public safety and judiciary bill, I want you to know that the governor's proposal that we helped put forward was a strategic plan that made really took a holistic approach to addressing the state's recent and ongoing spike in violent crime by making investments in prevention, intervention, and enforcement. It's a bill that we really do believe, because it is more holistic, has a better chance of having sustainable and long-term impact on crime and on public safety. My experience tells me that a bill that only makes investments in one or two specific areas will not give us the long-term and sustainable impact that the public is asking for. And I would argue that what we need today is, in fact, smart, data-driven investments at the state and at the local level. I'd urge you to consider the proposal we put forward to not only address violent crime, but also to boost support for first responders. And when I talk about first responders, I really am talking beyond, you all know me, I've worn a police badge for a long time, but I really am talking about first responders in the broadest sense of that word. We are asking more and more of our fire personnel and our EMS personnel and our police personnel, and we are blurring the lines between them, and so all of them need the support. We are calling them all into many, many more chaotic situations, and I think we just need to think very carefully about how are we supporting those folks that have already stepped up to the plate to give us their best effort. We also have to start addressing local emergency management needs, and I would also have to say that there are some operational concerns that we have. The Senate bill, as I read it, focuses on funding for enforcement of the law. And that's certainly not an inappropriate approach to doing it. It's one approach, though. It's not a broad-based approach. It is simply one approach, and it's an approach that I think has some limitations. I am very happy to see that the largest items in the Senate bill are around bonuses to law enforcement. I've got a body of folks out there that are very much in need of the support, and the Senate bill does provide support there. I would also note that the House bill also has funding that's used for law enforcement bonuses, and so I think that's some common ground that I was happy to see that from both sides. As I've said before, the work of law enforcement and first responders is unique, though, and as a state, we need to look at investing. And so I think bonuses are nice, but I really think of what we should be doing is thinking about how do we invest in public safety, because crime, while it has ups and downs and the roller coaster that we all see in the papers, but it oftentimes has a progressive development. And just as we didn't get to the crime problems we have today overnight, it may seem like it from the papers, but this has been building for a number of years. We're not going to work our way out of the crime problems with a flip of a switch or one simple answer. So I am very positively inclined to talk about the investments in the profession because we are going to have to draw new, highly qualified candidates into the business. But we also need to think very carefully about how do we take care of the public servants who are currently doing it the right way. So keeping officers, as I said, is very important. One caveat we would make, just because I have lawyers that surround me in many of the places, as I think many of you do, is we might look at years of service versus the age of the officer as the standard for bonuses. But I think that is an important component of this. The recruitment bonuses are also important, but as I've said before, I want you to think about that as not a short-term answer, it's a long-term answer. And I don't think that's how many people see the recruitment bonuses. They see recruitment bonuses, people will come to the table. And I know that when you're recruiting for a business, that may well be the case. But in my conversations with community leaders and their police and their sheriffs across the state, what I've heard from them is there's nobody in the pipeline. When I talk to my academic partners at the educational institutions that have to produce the future cops, there's nobody in the pipeline, or they are shutting down programs because there are so few students in the pipeline. So we are short of candidates, we're short of students, and we're short of officers that are coming into the pipeline. And I remind you that in this state, and this has been true since Chief William McCutcheon, who was a senator and who I served in his seat, created this body, it requires at least a 2-year degree, a minimum of a 6-month skills program, another 6 months to hire properly, given backgrounds and psychologicals and medicals that you have to do, followed by a year of probation. By my Catholic school math, that tells me that we have a 3 to 4 year out before the kids that we recruit today are even a probationary officer on the street able to enforce the law. So that's a gap that the recruiting process will help us with, but it won't help us immediately. And we have, by my count, 500 plus vacancies in police departments across the state. So at 3 to 4 years, if we could get the 500, it still would be rookie cops hitting the streets in 2026 before the recruiting money is going to start really showing dividends. It's an investment, as I mentioned before, but it is an investment in the future. I have advocated that we need to work smarter, and I think the best place for that to start is by fully funding the BCA's violent crime approach. BCA analysts and lab staff can be ready in a matter of months, and they can and are making an impact all around the state, even as we speak. But we're doing it by taking them out of other important assignments that you reflect in your bill. We've had to take them off of those assignments to try and have them move around the state to address the violent crime issues that the state is responding to as the lead investigative agency for smaller and medium-sized departments. And clearly, in this day and age, we're also supporting some of the biggest departments in the state also, and trying to support them at a time when they're unable to meet the needs of their community. We are very positively disposed toward the use of force training. We think that is money that is well spent. If you want to change behavior, there are only 2 ways that I know of to do that. One is by hiring good people, and secondarily, by training them properly. Actually, there's a third, and that's by managing them and supervising them properly also. But I think the training money, especially on use of force in this day and age, is an absolutely essential component that we need to do. In talking to chiefs from outside of the state, what I've heard from them over and over again is that simply giving them the money for the training is great, and they appreciate it. But if you're in a one-person department, who polices your city when you send your person to training? And so they need to have either mobile training so that they can do it at home, so they don't have to send somebody hours away and have them stay overnight someplace, or they need to have money available so they can backfill. So those are issues that we need to, I think, look at as we think about use of force training. Pathways to Policing has been a great program, but it is not a program that is being very much used. We have money still sitting there because we have only had 4 grants that were fully executed in 2022. And so while it's a great program, there must be some other issues there that we have to look at in order to incentivize a program that would help police departments hire good future cops. I appreciate, once again, the Senate's money to address the rise in violent crime. I would note that the money to a local sheriff in the metro area to address violent crime is a different approach than we would see. To ask the state agency that has responsibility for helping everybody in the state of Minnesota respond to violent crime by giving it to one local sheriff as an appropriation seems too little and ill-focused. So we're not opposed to it. We like, for example, the money that was provided to the VSETs, because once again, that is done on a much more of a statewide basis. It's addressing statewide issues. But we think that the BCA's approach of providing support for all 87 counties and all of the hundreds of police departments is a better vehicle for giving local police the support they need. Our data supports this, actually. Our data from 20 to 21 showed that we had a statewide increase in homicides. So 8.6% of homicides, that was up statewide, not just in the Twin Cities, although there was obviously some very high-profile issues in the Twin Cities. Rape was up statewide, 11.25%. Robbery was up 2.7%, and the largest increase in crime we saw was in aggravated assaults with almost, well, about 34% increase in aggravated assaults. So many of those aggravated assaults don't get the news, or they don't get the coverage that I think they should, because quite frankly, and this is a commentary I had from one local homicide commander, they're seeing upwards of 40% of their homicide victims be domestic violence and women. And so violence against women is very definitely something I think we need to think about, and that's not necessarily a boots on the ground approach. That is very much a working with advocates and working with housing and working with great detectives to keep people safe, to be able to hold the abusers accountable. And so we see that as very much a statewide issue, and hope that we can see more effort put into that. I also mentioned that this is not just a metro area issue. As I said, I know that the headlines sort of make that case, but aggravated assaults, which was the largest category of crime increase, it was up 27% in greater Minnesota. And I think well over half or more of all the homicides that the BCA has helped out with this year are in greater Minnesota. So while there is certainly crime in the Twin Cities, and there are certainly numbers that justify the concern here in the Twin Cities, we as a state agency have to also advocate to say, outside of the Twin Cities, there are also needs, and we believe that they need to be addressed. Rape, for example, as we talk about violence against women, was up higher, at a higher rate outside of the metro area than it was in the metro area, about 20% higher outside of the metro area. Funding for the State Patrol Aviation Unit also is appreciated, and I've said that in both this committee and other committees, and I will tell you that the State Patrol's Aviation Unit is always happy to assist local police, whether it's on violent crime cases or street racing, and we have been up probably far more than we've ever been up before in the last few years, because we have recognized that with that aviation asset up, we can end chases without having crashes that end people's lives, and that we can hold people accountable and do it in a safer and more effective manner. And that I can tell you from working a lot of weekends on the street racer issue that there is nothing quite like the look on the faces of folks that are, as they look up in the air and realize that there is no place they can go, that helicopter can't follow them, which makes, no matter how fast and furious their car is, kind of a moot point, frankly. I am very appreciative of the full funding for body-worn cameras, as you've heard me say for almost my entire time in this position. I really do believe that body-worn cameras are a win-win. It protects good cops who are doing it the right way and gives them the comfort to know that what actually happened is what is going to be seen. And it also gives great police chiefs and great sheriffs the ammunition they need when they have to take action against an officer who has stepped across a line. So it is a win-win there. And for the record, I want you to know that your money was well spent from last year. The State Patrol has just finished their rollout. We are now at 100% rollout of body-worn cameras for every State Patrol officer, and many of our civilian, commercial vehicle, and other folks are also well equipped with that. I mentioned at my beginning here that we need to take care of our first responders, and I want to say once again I appreciate that the Senate offers over $1 million for first responder mental health, and that is a really great start. I've been to way too many funerals, seemingly as of late. We're getting ready. We're coming up on Police Memorial Weekend. This Sunday at the state capitol, we'll toll the bell for those officers that lost their life in the line of duty. And I've had to bury some of my cops who took their own lives. They were cops who had seen too much and didn't feel that they had the support or the equipment to be able to go forward another day, and they ended their lives. And while we don't recognize their names on the list of the fallen, they paid the last full measure just like every other cop did. Something that they saw at the job is what caused them to take that action. And I do believe that we can do more and better for first responders, medics, firefighters, and cops who are suffering from PTSD. My conversations with our military partners is that they do a far better job than we in public safety do in taking care of our own. And I just think that is an area where it is ripe for us to do more. The governor and the House offered $2 million funding for a first responder wellness office and more funding for Minnesota HEALS, which includes critical incident stress management services for all first responders. And we think that is a direction we would like to see go. On the topic of taking care of our first responders, I once again appreciate that in your bill you do allow for PTSD-related deaths to have access to public safety officers' benefit accounts, but I will need to argue for cancer in firefighters. I've met with the Pater family, a St. Paul firefighter family. He was a phenomenal firefighter in great health, and within 2 years, he's dead of cancer. I was in Albert Lee at a firefighter's funeral there. Lieutenant Bass was running marathons and doing obstacle courses 2 years ago, and then dead from cancer. No family history, no other pre-existing conditions, and then stripped from his family, from the fire company, and from his community. I really do think that we need to revisit that and add that in to our consideration also. I know I'm running out of time, so I'll wrap up here pretty quickly. I've spoken a lot about prevention and intervention, and there is both widespread agreement, both the community, academics, and police, that the best way to reduce crime is to never let it happen. The Senate provides $5 million for youth intervention programs, and we think that's a great start. In fact, because we're seeing so many of our crimes, I was looking today, 2 17-year-olds that are being certified as an adults, they're youth. They're young people. They've done horrible things, but my question is if we roll back the tape a little bit back to when they were 14, 15 years old, what could we have done to intervene in their lives? Were there moments where they were at a crossroads that if we had helped them, given them the support, given them some resources, that we may not have been having them on trial for taking another life? So we are very supportive of youth intervention programs. We think that they make a ton of sense. There are a variety of them out there that I think, some of which are a little newer, the fact that something new doesn't necessarily to me indicate that it's not effective. So I think we need to base our judgments on guides of effectiveness, and in some cases, are we meeting the needs of groups that haven't had access in the past? The $210,000 for the racially diverse youth programs are another example of that, and Chief Anderson and Chief Franklin, who are both colleagues of mine, I'm sure will do great things with the programs down there. As I said, I think we need to do more, though, and the area that I will point out, which is probably closest to my heart, is the domestic violence and sexual assault funding. We are going to be in a position where we're going to have a $15 million federal funding gap due to declining funding from the Crime Victim Fund, which is revenue based out of fines. We've seen domestic violence increase by 40%, according to Violence Free, and yet we're not funding the gap that we know is already there. We not only need to be funding the gap, we need to be increasing funding for domestic violence. Because as I said, whether it's my homicide commanders, my advocates, or the victim services folks themselves, they are all crying out for help. And all too often over this last couple of years with COVID, they cried in isolation and they cried alone because they weren't getting to go to church and they weren't getting to go to work and they weren't able to go socialize with others. And so no one saw the scars. No one saw the bruises. No one saw the chipped teeth and the blackened eyes. And as a consequence, no one was able to intervene. Remember having a conversation with one of my DV advocates who I work with in St. Paul about the fact that one of her victims was commenting on the lack of privacy even in the exam room, because it used to be in the exam room you got to go in and the doctor would ask, "Do you feel safe?" And your abuser was oftentimes not allowed in the room with you. But when your exam room is a Zoom screen in the room and just off screen is your abuser, there is no privacy and there is no ability to call for help. And we need to do more for that particular group in particular. So. Last item that I'll mention is it's a community meeting that I was in the night before last, where we were discussing the Wilder report on the after action of the state in the advent of the George Floyd murder. It's top of mind actually because we're only a few days away from the second anniversary from what we will know will be demonstrations and events related to George Floyd. And that conversation reminded me of the importance of listening and listening deeply to community, engaging with them early and often, and as you've all pointed out, how do we do a better job of communicating and coordinating? Funding for local emergency management programs is an important component that has been highlighted in the Wilder report. We need to make sure that we have great emergency managers in all 87 counties. And if you were not concerned about George Floyd, the weather from last night should have woke you up and said, we're going to need great emergency managers all over the state because the water's coming and it's not going down as quickly as we'd like it to. We appreciate the 2 new school safety staff. I know Superintendent Evans mentioned the increase in cases we're having on school gun reports. Talked to my colleagues at St. Paul Schools most recently, and at one high school near where I live, they've had 3 cases of young people bringing guns to school. And so how do we prepare teachers and school administrators and others for youth that are committing crimes and they're committing them around schools? I spent a lot of time over by North High School after young Mr. Hicks was killed for bumping into somebody who's walked away from school. And while his death was tragic and absolutely was one of the most tragic cases I've seen, the impact on the kids that live in that neighborhood who walk to school was also palpable. So how do we create an environment where young people who should be focused on their education can in fact focus on their education, rather focus on whether or not they're going to get shot going to or from the school? We do need to make sure that the cybersecurity components with the BCA are continue the upgrades. We appreciate that. Once again, whether it's the international instability or protests, we have seen our state infrastructure, including, I believe, the Senate's website, defaced by hackers, and so we need to make sure we are working on that. I hope that, as we have in the past, that we can continue to work together. And that really is sort of the theme for this, is that most everything I've talked about is a partnership, whether it's partnership between police and sheriffs and police and counties, fire departments, emergency managers, the legislature, local officials, crime victim advocates, DV advocates, housing, all which are all in this together. And while you as the conference committee get to make these really important key decisions right now, what I hope to have done in this short presentation is to give you some of the voices that I've been hearing from community. And because I'm a cop, I believe that includes the cops and the sheriffs and the firefighters and all the rest who are also out there in community every day trying to keep everyone in Minnesota safe. And with that, I'll close and stand for questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. We'll hold on questions until we have all of our testifiers speaking. Next on our list is Chief Eric Warner, Minnesota Chiefs of Police, and that'll be followed by Bill Hutton, Sheriffs, and likewise after that, Brian Peters, MPPOA, and then finally Sheriff Bob Fletcher. And members, there are letters from all of these law enforcement organizations in your packets if you would want to follow along. They may not be exactly following the testimony, but nevertheless. Thank you for being here, Chief Warner. Would you identify yourself and then please proceed? Sure.
Well, good morning, Mr. Chair Limmer and Chair Mariani. My name is Eric Warner, and I am the immediate past president of the Minnesota Chiefs of Police Association and the current Chief of Police for the City of Maple Grove. I'm here today speaking on behalf of our association, which represents more than 300 police chiefs across the state and 150 of their command staff members. In addition to the letters that our association has submitted, I want to thank the committee for the opportunity to speak in support of the Senate File 2673. Our membership believes that this bill identifies and addresses the most important challenges facing police agencies and their communities across the state. And I want to highlight a number of key provisions in that bill. First of all, prioritizing funding for recruiting and retention. Policing in Minnesota is experiencing a crisis in filling, which we believe is approximately 1,000 vacant officer positions. In addition to diminished morale amongst the ranks of our dedicated men and women that are currently serving our communities. These agencies are struggling to fill patrol ranks and are having to move specialized positions out of their work just to answer the calls on the street. The recruitment and retention initiatives in this bill provide the tools for agencies across the state to rebuild the reputation of the policing profession as a worthy career that is attractive and welcoming for anyone interested in Minnesota, and also attracting those non-traditional candidates willing to make a career change. And that is done by promoting police officer career, the pathways to policing, and the hiring and retention bonuses. As previously mentioned, there's funding for the body-worn camera systems. Cost is the main issue for the 50% of the agencies in the state that currently don't have body-worn cameras. This technology is a vital tool to promote trust, increase transparency, and I believe most importantly is to capture the excellent work that is already being done by the highly professional officers that we have across our state. Additionally, the money for the violent crime enforcement teams, or the VSETs, bolstering this funding for the well-established and effective multi-jurisdictional VSETs to address the rise in their complex cases and the demands is severely needed to combat the increase in violent crime in the state and help coordinate the investigations of these complex cases that are transient across communities and jurisdictions. Currently, there is over 20 VSETs that provide valuable support to investigations units and agencies across our states. The Youth Prevention Program provisions. We believe that it is well known that the youth involvement in crime is on the rise, and the increased funding allows communities to hold juvenile offenders accountable, while at the same time there are supportive program and resources to intervene and reduce recidivism, ultimately putting them on the path to be productive in our communities. There is also many additional provisions that provide accountability for offenders that commit crimes and erode the sense of safety in our communities. One of the important provisions for the metro communities is the increased penalties for fleeing the police. Offenders who flee are usually connected to carjacking and stolen vehicles. Fleeing a police officer in a motor vehicle is an epidemic in the metro area that endangers the public, that can result in serious harm or death. Increased penalties will hold offenders accountable who are more emboldened, and bottom line is they just don't stop. To give a couple brief examples, my agency has been collecting in data, and I have found that that data is very similar to agencies around me. For the past 7 years, my agency reported 37 pursuits to the Minnesota Department of Public Safety through their reporting system. 37 over 7 years. Because of our restrictive pursuit policy that balances the need to focus on the more serious offenses, while at the same time making sure that the public and our officer are safe, 38 people have fled our officers last year alone. More than 7 years worth of the pursuits that we reported. And this year we're on track to possibly even double that amount, because I'm at almost 30 so far this year. So this increased accountability, I think, will help with that issue. Also, a highly important provision is funding for first responder mental health and wellness. Agencies will be able to provide the mental health support resources to its officers and first responders in general. Our most valuable resource is our officers, who experience the daily stress and oftentimes the traumatic effects of critical incidents. The funding for these programs will give the much needed assistance to our officers who experience post-traumatic injuries, and will allow for them to remain in the workforce where they can be productive and help keep their communities safe. Our officers need this critical mental health resource. And then lastly, I would like to comment on the reporting and criminal charges and cases dismissed provision, or what our association likes to call the Transparency in Charging Act. We are all aware of the dramatic increase in crime over the past 2 years across Minnesota. I have previously testified one key priority that we have heard from our members across the state is the need for county attorneys to report data to the legislature about felony-level offenses that go uncharged. Many policy reforms have been enacted that have raised the concerns of law enforcement leaders and community members at the same time. Bail reform, expanding pre-charging alternatives, expanded use of sign and release warrants for more serious crimes, or lack of charging serious crimes in some cases has reduced the accountability for offenders and contributed to the increase in crime. Additionally, chiefs are hearing from community members who are demanding answers to massive violent increases at the hands of serious offenders who should have been in jail but were able to commit additional crimes against the public. In my previous testimony, I gave several examples, but I would just like to give a few of those with this joint committee today. A suspect was involved in a high-speed pursuit. Investigation proved the case. County attorney refused to charge the case because the subject had other charges in another case and said that is good enough. Suspect fled from the officers again. Suspect was stalking a victim of domestic violence and taunting the victim, stating, "I got away again, you won't sleep." In another case, a suspect committed a burglary, stealing a shotgun and prescription medication. The suspect committed terroristic threats towards victims of burglary, and a search warrant recovered the shotgun in the suspect's possession. Charges were pled down, and the suspect was sentenced to 5 days of sentence to serve. There is continued refusal to charge felony marijuana cases in excess of 100 grams. While we understand the need for county attorneys to have prosecutorial discretion, we also understand the need for county attorneys. We also believe that unilateral changes in what laws are going to be enforced and prosecuted is a legislative matter, not a policy decision. Communities need to be involved in these decisions because they are the ones suffering as a result of the unintended consequences, sometimes fatally. We are all trying to do the best we can for our communities, and we just have to work together to do the best we can. As police leaders, we are an integral part of the criminal justice system. Collecting and reporting that data is one solution that will enhance our abilities as criminal justice leaders to collaborate with a greater understanding of the crime and public safety problems, inform us if policy initiatives are working, and help guide the best solutions for our victims and our citizens as a whole. So lastly, I want to close by commenting on violent crime. Over the past 2 years, it has become far too common to hear about another child murdered playing in their yard or a carjacking in broad daylight. In 2021, there were over 180 homicides and over 750 carjackings in Minnesota. Historic increases that we have not seen in my 30-plus years in this law enforcement profession. This sadly, so far this year, the numbers are even worse. Minnesotans need you to act on this issue. We urge you to pass legislation to fund the coordinated investigative efforts to curb the violence, pass legislation that will stiffen penalties for serious crime, and we thank the committee for considering this important bill and working together to address the serious crime issues as soon as possible. So, Mr. Chairs, I will be available for questions later on as needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Werner. Next will be Bill Hutton from the Minnesota Sheriff's Association, followed by Brian Peters, MPPOA. Director Hutton, welcome to the committee. Would you identify yourself for the record and then proceed?
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Limmer and Chair Mariani, senators and representatives. Thank you for the opportunity to appear in front of you today. My name is Bill Hutton. I am the Executive Director of the Minnesota Sheriff's Association, representing the 87 elected sheriffs of Minnesota. I am also a retired sheriff from Washington County. One thing that I've heard over the last couple of days from both bodies is crime has drastically and dramatically risen in Minnesota. There has been a number of references and conversation and testimony to that fact, and it is a statewide problem. The rise in crime equates to too many victims. They need our help and our attention now. The issues public safety faces with recruitment and retention of personnel are real. It is a crisis. I talk to sheriffs every day about issues within their offices. They are running short at every level of their office. Licensed peace officers are leaving daily because of the stress and the rhetoric, not feeling supported. They are closing pods, which is where individuals are housed within a correctional setting, in their jails because they do not have enough corrections officers to fill shifts. They are calling patrol deputies off the street to assist in the jail, resulting in delays in response to service calls on the street. Public safety answering points, otherwise known as dispatch centers, are transferring calls to other PSAPs because they do not have the personnel to answer the 911 calls. The shortage is causing service response issues. The community is not getting the service that they expect and deserve. These monies will help hiring and retention of folks to better serve their community. Minnesota sheriffs appreciate the monies identified for pathways to policing and education reimbursement. Every investment helps. The sheriffs of Minnesota recognize this as well. Last year, we awarded 24 $2,000 education scholarships to well-deserving individuals to further their desire to serve their community through public safety. The sheriffs appreciate money dedicated to the mental health treatment of first responders. Providing public safety services is not an easy task. No matter how resilient you think you may be, it takes a toll. I talk to sheriffs at least once each week about the number of folks they are losing because of the stress of the work. We are losing too many good women and men to the job. There has been discussion this week on money identified for body-worn cameras and the transparency they bring. Currently, 50% of the 87 sheriff's offices in Minnesota have body-worn cameras. Of the remaining that do not, 25% are hoping to have a body-worn camera program within the next 2 years. The remainder do not know if they will start a program. Two issues have been identified from sheriff's offices not initiating a program sooner. Money for data storage to include redaction software and philosophical opposition. Sheriffs believe that body-worn camera programs should be initiated through policy development at the local level. Monies dedicated to body-worn cameras will expedite agencies initiating the program. The sheriffs of Minnesota also appreciate the money identified for sexual assault examinations. We believe that a single source payer is the correct approach to the issue. Currently, each county handles the billing and payment process, resulting in too many errors. Sheriffs believe that victims should not be faced with any financial questions or financial responsibility for the examinations. We support the Office of Justice Programs as a single payer. Sheriffs travel the country picking up folks that have violated their Minnesota supervision. Sheriffs understand and support the need to retrieve these folks, but it is an unfunded process or mandate. We appreciate the money identified in the bill for the interstate compact transports to help offset the costs. As you can imagine, a small county spending $3,000 to retrieve a probationer is significant to a sheriff's budget. Sheriffs support additional funds going to youth intervention program grants. They know that youth intervention programs are successful. Sheriffs understand that each dollar invested pays dividends for the future of those engaged in the programming. As I stated in the Senate committee, prior to law enforcement, I worked as the executive director of a nonprofit community-based outreach program in the late 70s and 80s, and was also chair of the YIPA program, YIPA board. I know how important this funding is and the positive outcomes because of the investments. Also, as I stated in my opening, I'm a retired sheriff from Washington County. I know how important funding community corrections is to the county and those they serve. County sheriffs work daily with community corrections in a system-wide approach. Again, I appreciate being able to be in front of you today to communicate our support of just a few of the proposals. The problems that have been discussed throughout the session are real and need attention now. Thank you. I also will be available.
Thank you, Director Hutton. Next will be Brian Peters, MPPOA, Minnesota Police and Peace Officer Association. Mr. Peters.
Good morning, Chair Limmer, Chair
Welcome to the
Mariani.
committee.
Thank you.
Please introduce yourself and then proceed.
Good morning, I am Brian Peters, the Executive Director of the Minnesota Police and Peace Officers Association, also referred to as the MPPOA. The MPPOA is the largest association representing police and peace officers in the state of Minnesota. Thank you for the opportunity to comment today. I will speak to important provisions in the bill that we support and those that we oppose. First of all, the proposal MPPOA particularly supports is that we strongly support the provisions that focus on law enforcement, recruitment, and retention. Obviously, that's been a common theme with a lot of the other presenters today. And specifically, recruiting and retention in the Senate version. To be 100% clear, we absolutely must have more law enforcement officers to keep our communities safe. There are not enough qualified applicants entering the profession, and current law enforcement are leaving the profession at alarming rates. If there aren't enough quality candidates, we will see less help for community safety needs. Fewer law enforcement officers means longer response time for urgent calls for service, less time for community engagement, and a reduced presence to deter those wishing to cause harm and mayhem. The failure to fully staff and field law enforcement personnel will deny justice to victims. I was very happy to hear Commissioner Harrington, the Chiefs Association, the Sheriff's Association, talk about mental health. That is critical when it comes to retention. With the staffing shortages that we're experiencing, the uptick in violent crime, taking care of our first responders who are working right now should be priority number one. The money that was set aside for these programs, for cities to develop programs, is extremely important. In reality, right now, there's some cities that do mental health programs very well, and many that don't. I also believe it's important to have outside organizations there when people are suffering. We support the Abijah on the backside equine therapy for first responders. Language is included in the House in a similar version in another Senate Omnibus bill. We urge you to use the House language, particularly for equine experimental mental health models. MPPOA also supports Heroes Helping Heroes provision. The appropriation assists with mental health wellness for first responders who experience a disproportionate amount of trauma as part of their work duties. Now I'm going to speak to some of the issues that we oppose. MPPOA is opposed to provisions that do not provide greater public safety nor improve the law enforcement profession. We oppose funding unaccountable community responder organizations. Community responders, sometimes called violence interrupters, receive a significant funding in the House bill. In addition to backing a substantially unproven crime deterring method, these organizations, which are mostly nonprofits, have extremely little oversight, training, and accountability. We've seen locally how groups in Minneapolis are ill-equipped to deter crime or assist victims of crime. For example, the bill requires an evaluation report every 2 years of the community responders. Literally, that's the only evaluation or accountability written into the language of the bill, and we've looked for it. In Minneapolis, written reports are not required of these contractors. There's no assessment or public reporting on large contracts on the effectiveness, activities, and training. Commissioner Harrington spoke about what a law enforcement person has to go through to finally get on the streets. And in the House proposal, the way MPPOA views it is we're giving a large money to nonprofits who haven't been trained. There's no accountability. How will we know that that is going to be successful? And the fact that 2 years after receiving money is when we write an evaluation report. Funding unaccountable and unproven violence interrupters instead of law enforcement and public safety officials is akin to defunding the police. With murders, carjacking, and crime on the rise, communities need evidence-based solutions to prevent potentially thousands more unnecessary deaths and victims, and they need it right now. We also oppose the inappropriate investigative and disciplinary authority of civilian oversight councils. Current law permits local municipalities to have a civilian oversight council, a civilian review board in a sense, commission or oversight body established by that local unit of government. This board can currently make recommendations to the police department and chief in advisory fashion. Changing this law to give civilian boards investigative and disciplinary authority over a law enforcement agency and officer is inappropriate and unfeasible. These boards should not have the authority to conduct an investigation or impose discipline on professionals employed by that municipality. While many are well-meaning, these boards are ill-equipped to judge police officers as citizens lack the expertise and experience of a trained law enforcement professional. Overall, we urge Minnesota legislators to support our state's law enforcement officers who work to keep our community safe and the focus on recruiting and retention crisis. The rise in crime is at a crisis level, as many have said. That will only take drastic and immediate assistance to support law enforcement and to work to hold those who commit crimes accountable. Thank you for your work and service to the state, and I'll stay for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. And next will be Sheriff Bob Fletcher.
Mr. Chair, members, thank you for having us. Thank you for all the hard work that you've put in.
Welcome, Sheriff Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to stress the urgency of what we're at. the urgency of getting help on the street. In the next 24 hours, there will be 30-plus shots fired calls in the metro area. Several with automatic weaponry, with switches that are now mounted on handguns. 2 people will be shot. 3 people will be carjacked in the next 24 hours. You will only read about it in the newspaper if the person was an elderly woman that was assaulted. But on a regular basis, daily, people are being grabbed, punched, thrown out of their cars, and it's not stopping. It's increasing. Now, we can argue long-term about how we address this problem, but I'm here to tell you the urgency of Minnesota is the next 3 to 4 months, because the violence rates, the murder rates are clearly on pace to set records that we've never seen before. And so as you approach this bill, I would ask that we do whatever we can to get some help as soon as possible. And long-term RFPs that get money in place by the end of the year are not going to help turn the problem around this summer. Just remember that. 30 cases of shots fired, 2 people shot every day, 3 carjackings every day. The clock is ticking as to when the next victim will be victimized. So I'm here to ask you for some immediate help and to tell you that one of the bills in the Senate file does that. It proposes $2.4 million to be sent to the sheriff's office to be distributed to 7 counties in the metro area, the most serious violent areas that are being addressed, to address carjackings, violence, and assaults. As the bill was originally drafted, it said that it would become effective on enactment. I understand there may have been some tweakings in the compiling of the Omnibus bill, but it's our hope that you could make that bill and that money available upon enactment. We want to build upon the great work that we already have going with some auto theft prevention grants from the Department of Commerce. We have people out there arresting carjackers now. We're working with Washington County, Dakota County. We're working with St. Louis Park, Bloomington, Edina. All the agencies are saying the same thing. If we have more resources, we can do a better job of arresting and stopping carjackers in the metropolitan area. Now, it's not just carjackers, of course. It's violence, assaults. There's a lot of other crimes as well. But right now, carjacking is terrorizing our community. My wife, we live in Ramsey County, but she likes to drive over to France and 50th to do her hair. She's terrified when she goes over there to park in Edina because she's heard of all the carjackings that have taken place. My good friend Patrick Connolly, his wife was up on Grand Avenue, and 3 carjackers followed her home to her house on Osceola. And they waited till she pulled in the garage. They approached her with a gun. She had her small child, one of her 2 twins, in the car. And they said, "Get out of your car, we're taking your car." She begged them repeatedly, "Let me get my child out of my car before you take my car." Thankfully, they relented, and her car was carjacked, and she got her 2-year-old. Think about the terror that causes her on a daily basis. An 80-year-old woman was carjacked out of Stillwater at a funeral, a guy hiding in the back seat, left bruises on her faces. These occurrences I mention because they're happening every day. And these carjackers are crossing jurisdictional lines. Crime is no longer local. It was that way when I started 40-plus years ago, but crime isn't local. They're using stolen cars, and hundreds, thousands of stolen cars, to carjack others, to victimize others across jurisdictional lines. The only way we're going to stem this tide is to get a cooperative effort across regional lines built on using overtime that can flush and help these departments address their problem. Otherwise, we will be sitting here next session with record crime rates, record carjacking rates, thinking to ourselves, geez, did we miss an opportunity to do something last year? The people of Minnesota want help. They're drowning in crime. Law enforcement, as you heard it, we're drowning in crime as well. Minneapolis is down 200 officers. St. Paul is down 100. Our sheriff's office is down 15. We need help at retaining and recruiting officers, no question about it. But overtime dollars dedicated to address carjackings can have an immediate impact. On the recruitment phase, when John Harrington and I started together, and you might say, I can't believe Harrington and Fletcher started together. In 1976, we took a test. There was 1,891 people at the St. Paul Civic Center. 1,890, you know how many took the St. Paul test last year? 100. 100 people. There's to tell you the type of situation that we're in. So we need help convincing people this is a good job. And immediately, we have to make sure people don't bail on us and retire for a variety of other reasons. I'm a big advocate for prevention, intervention, and suppression. I will say it's a three-legged stool. We need to do all and everything. As a matter of fact, we have some of our ambassadors in the crowd here. We believe strongly in ambassadors and interveners, et cetera. We hire them as community service officers and ask them to go to our most serious problems and help us. They work hand in hand with us. They're assigned to a law enforcement officer and they partner with them. That's a very important part. The prevention programs in both bills, I can't say enough about the long term. These kids that we're seeing at age 15, they begin their criminal activity, unfortunately, in 3rd grade. They can't read, they suffer self-esteem, they get into other types of activities, and the evolution of a child. I am an expert on juvenile crime. I spent 4 years as a juvenile commander. I can tell you I support all that. But right now, the most urgent need in Minnesota is to stem the bleeding that is taking place on the streets in our state. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff Fletcher. We'll open it up for discussion by committee members. Senator Bigham? Oh, Senator Osmond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could I have Commissioner Schnell, please?
Senator Osmond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, members, I have a fairly long history in trying to help people coming out of incarceration to reintegrate. I've advocated for and been successful in getting some funding for some programs, particularly through an organization called Accessibility. I believe in it. I signed on to Senator Dietzig's bill. I'm not sure what the status is of that funding. I've also been very supportive of other efforts, particularly in the realm of reintegration. Last year, if members will recall, I had a bill that we got through with strong bipartisan support. I don't think there was one red vote on the Senate floor. Helping inmates that are exiting incarceration so that they have a checklist that it's standardized to make sure that they have as much success so they don't reoffend. So, and I know there's quite a few members that probably don't understand why I'm on this committee. This is a little unusual. I have always treated the judiciary as one of the committees I really don't want to be on. For any number of reasons. It has nothing to do with the chair or the ranking member at all. But seriously, I'm here to provide maybe a little different perspective, and I think that is always a good thing for the legislature, especially considering this is my last year. So with that in mind, Commissioner Schnell, I listened on the way in after dropping off the last of my school children at school. I listened to your comments and I was very disappointed. Very, very disappointed. You spent a lot of time criticizing the Senate positions, in particular, the money that was being put forth to try and increase availability for bed space and put people behind bars. And I just want to go through a few numbers and then ask you a question. So on January 1st, 2018, we had 9,963 people that were incarcerated under state custody. In 19, that number dropped to 9,479. In 2020, it dropped further to 9,381. Now, of course, we did have a pandemic, rightfully or wrongfully so. That number dropped significantly because of the issues. It dropped down to 7,325 at the beginning of 21, 7,511 in the beginning of this year, and right now it stands at about 7,400, a little bit more than that. The Senate side proposal provides significant resources, in my opinion, additional to the existing budget we're currently underneath for this biennium. And I have to ask this question, because you do represent the Walz administration. Is it the Walz administration's position that at a time where we have record-setting crime, not just in the metropolitan area, but across Minnesota, is it the Walz administration's position that when we have this level of increase, that not providing additional resources to put more people behind bars is the right thing to do? Is it the Walz's position that locking more people up when we're in the middle of a crime wave is a bad thing? Is that the Walz's position, Walz administration's position?
Commissioner Schnell.
Mr. Chair, Senator Osmick, I appreciate that question. The position of the administration is that we need to hold people accountable. And we have a plethora of laws on the books today that allow for that to happen. The increases that are being proposed here are monumental, overwhelming. And when we look at this, we think about the ways that we can be effective, smart about how we do this. One of the strategies must be, should be incarceration. Absolutely. I've said that in my comments, and I want to be clear about that. But as you know, and I think you in particular, because of the strong stance you've taken on issues around reintegration and reentry, know that these people are coming back to our communities. To think if we were to adopt the proposal as it stands, again, we should be holding people who are involved in multiple gun crimes. We should be holding people who are involved in robbery cases, carjacking, accountable, and lock them up. Absolutely. But that can't be the essence of our strategy. We have to recognize that along with that comes, at 10 years out, $1 billion investment in a new prison. That's the reality. And I think the question is, what works? What is the evidence support? That is the position. You know, the comments by Sheriff Fletcher, I think, are right on. This summer, as a former police chief myself, I know that this summer is a critical time. And part of that strategy must be locking these people up. But that can't be the end of it. That's the point.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Osmick.
I appreciate those comments, and I think to sort of expand on what I said, I appreciate the fact that you understand that there's monumental and overwhelming funding, but in the same respect, it's, in my opinion, rather tone deaf that the Senate side position wants to provide you additional resources to deal with a wave of crime of this magnitude. And people across the I'm a metropolitan legislator, people across the metropolitan area are really beginning to feel the impacts of policies that we have started many years ago, not under your watch, not even under your predecessor's watch, of not incarcerating people and not treating low-level offenses with some level of strength. Again, I've never served on the committee, so I'm not as well-versed as my colleagues. But it seems to me that the chickens are coming home to roost. And the Senate position is to provide the resources to put them into the chicken coop for extended periods of time. And I think it is absolutely tone deaf that the administration wants to turn down funding like this. I didn't hear any criticism, I could have missed it as I was driving in, of the House positions. I didn't see any criticism, I didn't hear any criticism, I can be corrected, of the disruptor money that's been put in here, which I agree with Mr. Peters in his testimony. This is nothing short of defunding the police. I'm sure there's a disagreement on this panel whether that's happening or not. But I mean, I'm not going to continue to beat on this. I just strongly believe, coming from an outside view on this, in this body, listening to what my constituents say, as well as ones around the metropolitan area, including I even have friends who are on a sheriff's department, not in this jurisdiction, that have said what's happening. And when we come with a load of money to help the situation, that the Walz administration says, nope, we don't want it. I think that is very tone deaf, and I am hopeful that we can find a way here in this conference committee to get this money to help the situation. And I know that 10 years from now, we may have to build a prison. Well, last time I checked, we haven't opened a new prison since 2000. So that would be 10 years from now, it would be over 30 years before we built a new prison. And I agree with the technology requests that are being made. I think they would be helpful, make you more efficient. But Commissioner, I plead with you to reconsider the Walz administration's position that we don't need more bed space and we don't need more help to put people behind bars. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Shell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Osmek, I appreciate that. I want to be really clear about the Senate's position, as I understand it, and my read is that this is not a plethora of new resources for the Department of Corrections. This is, in fact, a policy position that increases criminal sanctioning for a host of different offenses. In fact, all incarceration, moving from 2/3 that we have right now to 75% is one of the provisions. And those are policy distinctions. The dollars come along with that. And so I spent almost 30 years as a police officer serving in communities, a number of communities across this metro area. I spent a good portion of that time focused on and invested in locking people up and holding those accountable who are causing that harm accountable. We need to do that, as I said. Tone deaf, Mr. Senator Osmek, we are not. We are, in fact, focused on the reality of today and what the future implications are of this. And I have to point out that in 2018, 2017, many of the issues that we're talking about today were not on the table. And in fact, if you look at the fundamental increase in violent crime, we weren't having necessarily these concerns. Crime has always been a concern and will continue to be a concern. But the reality is the spike, if you begin to look at the data, happened at the time of the pandemic. And I don't want to tie every single problem to the pandemic, trust me. But we can't ignore the fact that something changed in 2019 that had caused an incremental and exponential growth in crime. We can't reject that fact. And are the resources necessary for law enforcement to do what's needed on the street? 100%, I agree. Are the resources needed to be smart about how we manage people in our criminal justice system on the supervision front? 100%. But ultimately, I want to be clear about the fact that the increased resources that you're talking about are really resources that are tied to new policy provisions that the evidence does not suggest will in fact make Minnesota safer.
Senator Osmek.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioner
We've got a
Snell.
long list.
I agree with you. I'm going to make it really brief. I agree with you. There is a policy decision to be made. I don't disagree one single bit, and that's the key, is that the Senate provisions increase and push towards a policy of dealing with this wave of crime and doing it in a responsible, in my opinion, a responsible manner. And yes, it is tied to policy because we believe it is time to enforce as opposed to create other positions that are made up out of whole cloth. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Bingham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm actually going to have one same question for Director Hutton, Chief Wilkie, and Director Peters, if they could come up. And as you're coming up, I'll let you know the question. What is the risk if nothing is passed this year? If obstruction continues, what does that mean for law enforcement and victims? I don't care who starts, by the way.
Senator,
Mr. Peters, Director Peters.
Chair Limmer, Senator Bingham, could you repeat it one more time?
What does that mean for law enforcement and victims?
Chair Limmer,
Director Peters.
Senator Bingham, we can't waste another year. I've sat here for 2 years fighting many issues when it comes to the rank and file. If we wait, more damage will be done. We can't. We need solutions, and we need them now. But we also need solutions that make sense.
Chair Limmer?
Mr. Hutton, or Director Hutton.
Thank you. I think we've all heard throughout the last couple of days the word crisis being used and tossed around quite a bit. We are in a crisis mode, right? We are in a crisis mode on the street with crime. We are in a crisis mode with the victims, the numbers of victims that are out there, and we are also in a crisis mode within the profession. And again, it's not just licensed peace officers, it's corrections officers, and it's telecommunicators as well. So we're in that crisis mode. So yes, most definitely, you know, it's bad terminology, but the perfect storm is happening right in front of us. And so there needs to be a responsible response.
Chief Warner.
Chair Limmer, I just want to, I guess, try and speak for the victims. When I presented my testimony at the Senate committee the last time, one of the things that we tried to do was to bring victims to talk about their experiences. And if we do nothing, those victims who are silent, I think are going to increase, and we're going to have a tremendous impact on victims and the safety of our communities. We have to do something because we are seeing that we're going to have a very tough summer over the next few months. I also think the word crisis has been used in regards to our officers. When we say crisis, it's not just a crisis of we don't have the numbers. We are in a crisis that we are down numbers, but our officers are stressed, and they are at almost a breaking point. Most agencies that have the resources have implemented some type of mental wellness to keep them as healthy as possible, but we can't just constantly run with overtime or stretch them between different units to try and do the basic services. So if we don't do something today, I think we're going to have a crisis with our personnel, we're going to have a tremendous impact on our victims, and a tremendous impact on the safety of our communities.
Thank you, gentlemen. I have one question for Sheriff Fletcher, if he'd come back up, too.
Who did you want?
Sheriff Fletcher.
Sheriff Fletcher.
I also just want to say, like, when
Senator Bingham.
these three gentlemen spoke, they also are talking about the resources needed for local government. That offset by the state offsets property taxes and fills a hole that they need to work collaboratively. Sheriff Fletcher, I'm in a unique position where I'm right on the border of your county. And I spoke to my sheriff who said people that carjack, flee out of my county end up in yours and you catch them for them. Collaboratively, but you end up having to be tagged in to help with that and your deputies. And so your three proposals help my area. So I just want to say that for the record and out of respect for my own sheriff. There is Senate File 4286, and I know you're a big proponent of juvenile justice reform and programming. Just because I don't expect you to memorize Senate files, because I'm sure most of us on here don't, this is the post-juvenile delinquency adjudication treatment homes and the Ramsey County violence prevention.
That's correct.
Can you talk a little bit about how you think that would help kind of the metro area, that approach?
Sure.
Sheriff Fletcher.
Chair and members, making the community safer is a complex puzzle. Each of you has some knowledge in every part of that puzzle. Certainly law enforcement, prevention, intervention. But one of the pieces of the puzzle, since we know that 2/3 of our juvenile carjackers and actually shooters are juveniles versus adults, 2/3 of them are, we need to have a strategy for children after they're arrested. Arresting them is a key part. You can't really intervene in their lives until you actually have arrested them. But with the loss of Boys Totem Town in Ramsey County and the loss of the Hennepin County Homeschool in 2015, both Ramsey County and Hennepin County have lost alternative ways to help kids get better. There was a proposal in 2015 to have an alternative in the city of Richfield that died because of some opposition. Won't get into detail, but everyone agrees in both sides of the river that there needs to be some more attention to juveniles that are arrested for serious offenses. And so that file refers to the possibility of intensive treatment homes, centers that are locked, where children could get mental health issues for depression, anxiety, chemical addiction treatment, etc. And it would be in a secure setting. Ramsey County has proposed that. I had started on the end of a more structured detention center. John Choi and I came to agreement that the middle ground can be an intensive treatment home concept. And so that project came to fruition too late for the Senate to really take it up, but the bill has been floating around. I've met with Speaker Hortman and a lot of and my Majority Leader Miller. It's floating around. There's a possibility it could be included in the bonding bill, a $15 million. When I met with Ryan Winkler, he said, well, we'd like to have that in Hennepin County as well, so he may add that on the bonding bill for Hennepin County. So part of the puzzle, have a treatment program in a secure setting for children. One of my sons, I always just say one because the other two say, Dad, why do you always say you're my son? One of my sons experienced that type of treatment in Dakota County and found that he got his GED while he was there. He got chemical addiction treatment. The juvenile system can work for kids. It can help kids. And we should use every resource we have to help those children, but we can't get them help until we apprehend them for their offenses.
Thank you, Sheriff. And that bill is authored by Senator Aaron Murphy and Representative Cowley Hurd.
Thank you, Sheriff. We'll move on to Senator Latz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. I have to say, I got a few comments and I got a question. I have to say I was flabbergasted that Mr. Peters from the MPPOA seemed to suggest that only cops can hold cops accountable because other citizens don't have any idea what they're doing when they're analyzing behavior by police. And that's why we shouldn't have any citizen oversight councils. Now, there may be good policy reasons to have discussions about whether there should be citizen oversight councils, what kind of guardrails to put around their authority and who should be on them. But to come up here and to suggest that only cops can hold cops accountable when we know for damn sure that hasn't happened in a lot of places, and a lot of victims have been created because of unaccountable cops. Not every cop, Most cops aren't that way, but some are, and the cops weren't holding their own people accountable. To come up here and to suggest that they're the only ones who can do it when they've proven they can't is really offensive. It's really offensive, and not just to me, to the communities that are being mistreated by those rogue cops that weren't held accountable. And then, of course, to come up with the political messaging. I heard it twice here, and we heard it during the course of the session, too. Even the chairman mentioned it, this bit about defunding police. This was something which was mentioned several years ago by some members of a city council in Minneapolis, which they walked back very shortly after they mentioned it, which never actually took place, was never passed as a policy anywhere. Yet it seems to have become a very convenient and probably somewhat effective political message for those who would choose to hijack that language to try to advance their own political purposes. And it gets more and more offensive when people come and say that, when they know for a fact it is not true. It is not on any agenda before the conference committee here today. It is not in any bill before the conference committee here today. And to suggest that if we choose to fund one piece of something that Mr. Peters doesn't like, means we're not going to fund something else that he prefers, that's akin to defunding the police, is absolutely ridiculous. And we should not sit here and accept that kind of suggestion. This is the state legislature. We know better. You want to take your political messaging, take it somewhere else into a press conference or something, where it would be just as wrong, but at least you can say it without being held accountable by the legislators here. Now, I really admire what Sheriff Fletcher had to say for a couple of reasons, because he's got a lot of experience and he knows how to do his job in a lot of ways. And he came up here and he said he supports the crime prevention initiatives that are in the proposals before this conference committee. He supports them. And those are mostly in the House side of the bill, of the proposals here. So when we get to the end game, as Senator Bigham was suggesting, that failure is not an option for the safety of all of our constituents and the other people in Minnesota, let's remember what Sheriff Fletcher said, that crime prevention is an important piece of the puzzle. And he mentioned it again when he came back up here the second time. Prevention and intervention. And one thing he really said that was important that I caught, I'm sure we all heard it, the juvenile criminal offenses, it begins in 3rd grade because some of those kids can't read. They can't read. Now, that funding is not within this conference committee's purview, but it is within this legislature's purview. In this non-budget year, I don't care if it's a budget or non-budget year. I haven't been here in the, 19 years sessions I've been through. I haven't had one session where we didn't do budget stuff in a non-budget year. So don't give me this, we can't do it this year because it's a non-budget year. It's just an excuse to put stuff off that we don't want to deal with this year. We got to fund education. We got to make sure there are adequate resources into our most troubled schools where those 3rd graders can't read, so that they can have not only a sense of self-esteem or a sense of empowerment, but the capability to do the schoolwork, to stay in school, to not drop out. I think I heard somewhere along the line, not here today, one of the single most important markers of whether a child is going to go down a path of crime or not is whether or not they graduate from high school. And if they're dropping out, they're not graduating from high school. And if they can't read, they're dropping out. So let's fund our K-12 system adequately so the kids that are at risk can learn to read in third grade. Our youth intervention programs told us they need $10 million to adequately fund their needs, their services in Minnesota. $10 million. The Senate started out with what, 2 or 3? And it was increased in Senate Finance to 5. In my judgment, the House came up short in this one. They need to come up at least to the Senate level. Frankly, if the chickens are coming home to roost from our past decisions, they're coming home to roost in the failure to invest in prevention adequately in the past too. Not just the failure to lock up the low-level offenses and think that somehow you're going to solve crime by throwing the low-level offenders into the jails and the prisons with the experienced criminals who are going to teach them how to do the job as a criminal once they get out. So I'd like to see YIPA funding at the $10 million level, because those chickens are going to come home to roost in a few years if we don't start making those decisions now. And that failure will be on this conference committee if we don't make those adequate funding decisions now. Now, if we want to save all of this $8 billion for tax breaks for the wealthy, we can do that. We want to get into the political messaging here, we can do that too. Or we can take some of that, prevent crime in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years in a way that we didn't 5, 6 years ago. I do have a question for Sheriff Fletcher, just trying to flesh something out here, if I may. If Sheriff Fletcher would be willing to come back.
Sheriff Fletcher, we might need a permanent chair up front for you.
I need a wider one than those at the back, I know that.
Sir, lads.
Thank you. Sheriff Fletcher, I don't recall, and I'm sure you've told us this before, but you testified that you need immediate help, and I agree with that. We need to get prompt, immediate resources into law enforcement to beef up the numbers, and not just of patrol officers to be able to respond immediately to the calls, but to have adequate resources in investigation so they can follow up and track down the offenders and so on. And one of your proposals has to do with using Ramsey County Sheriff's Office as essentially a grant distributor for resources in the 7-county metro area. Could you please remind me how it is that you would determine what kind of uses those funds would go to and how that would be immediate, provide immediate resources for preventing crime this summer?
Mr. Chair, Senator Latz,
Sheriff Fletcher.
as a background to this, we at the Sheriff's Office have what's called a carjacking and auto theft team. We have 3 deputies that are funded by you through the legislature as part of the auto theft grant. I have supplemented those 3 with another 3 deputies that are part of our apprehension team. As you probably know, the sheriffs are charged in the Constitution with pursuing and apprehending felons. That really is one of our mandates. So all warrants come to the sheriff's office from locals, but not just warrants. Everyone that has committed a felon is, technically, it's our job to go find them. So what we've done is that team of 6, working with Washington County investigators and St. Louis Park and Bloomington, et cetera, we've put a collaboration together where we work together. We daily, in fact, on my phone, I can tell you every time there's a car stolen, every time there is a carjacking, the analyst from Hennepin County, Jessica over there in CISA, the analyst in Woodbury, we're working together information-wise. The problem is we don't have enough resources or bodies to respond to every carjacking or every serious event. And so we're scrambling a little bit. In fact, the Auto Theft Commerce Department has granted us $30,000 a month in overtime for the next month to help address that. But our goal is to put some resources in place for the 7-county area with the agencies we already have relationships. The commissioner will say there are VSETs. Well, yes, there are VSETs, but none of those VSETs target carjackings, and not one VSET works across the river. There's no interagency VSET across the river. And so our goal would be to really quickly get small grants of somewhere $50,000 to $100,000 in overtime out to agencies that want to dedicate officers to help us address the carjacking and violent crime stuff. So we're fine, and to be frank, it doesn't have to be the sheriff's office, but we're the best at it right now, at coordinating. Everyone knows that Ramsey County is coordinating the carjacking agenda here in the metro area. We've arrested many, many of them, and we lead the way in arresting auto thieves as well. So, but it doesn't have to be us. The reason we propose this is we know that we can get it done, and we can get it done effectively by the summer. So if you want to limit how much money comes to Ramsey County because people are concerned about us, no problem with that. You know, we can say 20%, 15% could come to Ramsey County. We just want it, we know our partners. We have support in a lot of different parts of the metro. We want to get the money out to them, have regular meetings of the officers and deputies that are working the problem, expand the number of people that we have working on it, and impact the problem. So it really isn't complicated. We would just basically issue overtime grants for $50,000, $100,000 to agencies in the 7-county area that would want to be a part of the solution.
Senator Latz?
Mr. Chairman and Sheriff Fletcher, thank you for that. I wasn't clear exactly if you were looking at overtime. So you're talking about people when you're saying we need resources. For what you're proposing with this is to get more people on the street in the form now of taking existing officers and paying them overtime to spend more time on the street. Because we know the pipeline, there are other proposals in here for retention, bonuses and stuff like that, and we know the pipeline to get new people into the profession is going to take a lot longer than this summer. So I was trying to get a sense of what's the immediate solution, and you're saying overtime funding really is a key right now. So thank you for.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, Senator Latz, yes.
Sheriff Fletcher?
Right now, the only solution is overtime. Some departments might be flush and they want to dedicate a full-time body. The grant would allow that to happen as well. I recognize that the time take to hire people is extensive, but also recognize if there's a large RFP from the Department of Public Safety, which I've applied for many, many times, the likelihood of any of that money being available before October 1st is very small. And most cases, it's not put in play till December. So this was an attempt to really address the problem this summer that has ravaged our community. And I want to say just one last thing. Mr. Schnell said about 219, do not assume that the pandemic is the primary driving force in violence, because July and August of 2019 were the most significant increases we saw in shootings and murder rates in the metro area. This is before the pandemic and before George Floyd's murder. It's important to keep an eye on those statistics because, yes, the pandemic aggravated it, no doubt. George Floyd's murder aggravated the attitude toward police, but the crime increases started in the summer of 2019 before either of those.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Latz?
I also had a question or two for Commissioner Schnell, if I may.
All right. Commissioner Schnell? Sheriff Fletcher, don't go way in the back of the room. You're very popular today. Yes, Senator Latz.
Sheriff Fletcher, I'll give you 2 days a year. You've been here at least twice this spring. Commissioner, thank you for your earlier testimony relating to technology infrastructure and the importance of it. And unfortunately, that's an area that it's too easy for us to not invest in because there's not really a constituency that comes up here and clamors for it. And we can always say, well, the computer will last another year, we'll deal with it then. But we can't say that for 22 years. If you're still working on year 2000 servers and using fax machines to communicate, we're way behind. And so this is the year, I think, and we have the resources, and these are shorter-term initial investments. There's a long-term maintenance aspect to it, but when you've got to upgrade physical infrastructure, that's the kind of shorter-term expenditure that we can do with what may be a shorter-term surplus, if you will, and we will get a huge bang for the buck out of that. And having the access to that data then, and being able to crunch the data, draw conclusions from it, make policy based upon it, will enable us to focus on evidence-based policy decision-making, and the results that we know the data will show us will be achieved by making other non-technology infrastructure policy decisions, such as are mandatory minimums effective in deterring crime? My understanding is they're not, from the data I've seen. But I think it's a legitimate question. What does the data tell us about that? How about longer incarceration periods, 3/4 versus 2/3? Is there a deterrent effect from that? Other than, I know always the response is, it's a bad guy we've taken off the street for a longer period of time, so that bad guy isn't committing new crimes. And I acknowledge that's a counterpoint to in this conversation. But we don't have the data if we don't have the technology to analyze it. I'd rather focus on evidence-based rather than political messaging. But one thing I would like you to expand upon, if you wouldn't mind, is the department's proposals for, number one, increasing family support for those who are incarcerated, and number two, the pathways to employment efforts.
Commissioner Schnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Latz, I'll talk quickly about pathways to employment before family supports. The pathways to employment really is, as we've seen, and as you all are aware, there is a pronounced need for workers across our state. Interestingly, in recent times, we have seen employers, business owners from across the state reaching out to us, trying to create a pathway to get access to people who are leaving our correctional facilities and trying to find ways to get them, really those people who have really invested during their time in incarceration to come into their work settings. And across the nation, we had a testimony from a person, I think, last year, Jeff Korzinek, who is the chief economist at the Third Fifth Bank out of Chicago, who talked about the fact that at this point in time, our states and really our nation's economic viability is really grounded in making sure that we put everybody who can and wants to work. And we know that one of the greatest crime prevention efforts, especially for people who are reentering, is a job. And what we saw in Senator Osmick's bill last year was a series of mechanisms that created an easier pathway to that employment more quickly. What this proposal does is really creates and provides staff and services to create connections between community-based employers, some of our education partners, because some of these employers are asking us to provide a level of technical training or expertise to some of these people. And in some instances, some of the employers and or labor unions have asked for the opportunity to come into the correctional facilities in that 6 months or 4 months prior to release to create connections, to provide evaluation, in some cases maybe even to do a bit of training, and so that when they walk out the door, there is a solid plan. They have a place to live and they have a good job. And ultimately, we need, this program is really intended to help build the infrastructure to create those opportunities, to make those opportunities real and viable. And so that's really what this is about. We simply do not have the capacity, given our current resources, to make sure that there is a warm handoff and a clear and strong connection between the requests that we're hearing from employers across the state and the people who are on the inside. we do our best, and we have a small reentry team that tries to make as much of those connections as possible. But right now, frankly, we have been more overwhelmed with requests. The second, on the family support side, this legislature last year passed the Healthy Start Act, which I think was really an investment in families. It has generated national attention as being immensely progressive as a state, and really a good and solid investment that we know will pay dividends in the long haul. And so this legislature knows the importance of families, knows the importance that investments in that can make, and tie that then with the pro-social positive connections that occur between and among those who are either imprisoned in our jails or whatever, creating stronger connections. In our case, we want to make sure that there is both staff and services available to support family initiatives. The single most requested program in the Department of Corrections, among both men and women who are committed to the Department of Corrections, is parenting. And I think that's remarkable, and something that we cannot turn our back on, because at the end of the day, having an incarcerated parent is an adverse childhood experience that ultimately increases risk for those kids. And so things like education and training that we provide in prison, we can draw a direct correlation. When parents are involved in those types of programs inside our correctional facilities, it pays a real measurable dividend for their children. So investment in these types of family programs and supports, and we're not talking about massive dollars here on top of it, is something that this legislature has a history of seeing benefit in, and I think would pay a dividend.
Chairman?
Senator Latz, I just want to remind that we have 4 more senators that wanted to get in on the conversation.
Thank you. I'll just do a quick follow-up, and then I got one final, what I think should be a short question. I'll be done. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On that point, the recent crime in Wisconsin, where a 14-year-old boy assaulted and murdered a 10-year-old girl, if I remember the ages right. There was an article in the paper a couple days ago. The 14-year-old boy's father was in and out of prison. And I'm sure there's a direct connection there between the parental legacy and the impact on the kid. We have a way to pay real dividends here and help prevent real crime by providing this kind of family support. One other thing I wanted to ask real quickly, Commissioner, has to do again with the technology, because it's not just about accessing data to crunch it to give us evidence for policy making, but it's other aspects of just running the operations, right? Making sure that the different parts of the system can talk to each other, communicate with each other, and take action. And my understanding is there was, we actually had, I think, a victim testify in this committee, in the Senate Judiciary Committee earlier this session, relating to that issue, that a probation officer or supervised release officer wasn't aware of someone else, one of her supervisees had been arrested because the data wasn't being shared, the computers weren't talking. Could you elaborate a little bit on that and how what you'd like to do with technology infrastructure investments would help prevent those kinds of things from happening?
Briefly, please.
Mr. Chair, Senator Latz, ultimately what we endeavor to see happen is that when there is that contact, that arrest, that a supervising agent is notified, so that in addition to addressing whatever criminal activity or concern there may have been with that person, they can also take action relative to the probation or supervised release violation, which ultimately serves, again, our collective interests and holds people accountable when they are not doing what we expect them to do. And we know that by doing this, we will be safer. We will ensure that we get warrants on people and that they get held, and that we're addressing this on every front. And the challenge today is really the cross-jurisdictional sides of this. Oftentimes, if you're in one city and you have a relationship with probation, that officer or that agency may notify directly. But when it's cross-jurisdictionally, it oftentimes does not happen, and that needs to change, must change.
Senator Lance, if I could add, you had stated that by third grade, that's when there's a marked increase in juveniles getting involved in crime. And you made reference to the reference at home and the situation in Wisconsin. I would agree with you that I think that if there's any highly significant cause that leads a person to a life of crime, it doesn't start at third grade, it starts in the home. And my experience as a correction officer, and I'm sure, Commissioner, you might agree with this, in my experience walking cell blocks and talking to inmates, and you get to know them over the years. You're there as long as they are. Sometimes the guard is there longer. And you begin to have conversations. You begin to find out where they come from, what their families are. High probability, 85, 95% of the time, that individual was, if he was raised at all in his own home, he comes from a broken or an abusive house. And that's where it really begins. Then it starts surfacing in third grade. But it really is, the problem is in the home. And unfortunately, our bill doesn't go quite that deep. But
Mr. Chair?
Senator, just briefly, because I've
Yep, because he's too humble, I know he
Other
would
members.
never even mention it, but then Sheriff Hutton actually won a national award for Children of Incarcerated Parents program that he, and maybe somebody else that used to be on the county board, helped implement in Washington County. So we do have folks available that understand how to do that program.
Yeah, thank you. We're going to get back to our lineup. Thank you, Commissioner. Representative Becker-Finn, did you want Sheriff Fletcher to come down now?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So a couple things, and I think I think everybody at this table wants there to be less crime. We want fewer people victimized. We want everyone in our communities to be safe. I think that is a shared value regardless of the bills we've carried and why we're sitting at this table today. I think I can say that. And we need to be focused on prevention. And if we're talking about bed space, it's too late. If we're talking about bed space, then we failed on the prevention piece. And with the prevention piece, part of that is deterrence. And I don't think it's a secret. I'm a big nerd. I love to read stuff. I like to actually know stuff and read data. And what we know is that the number one thing we can do to prevent crime, outside of taking care of people and making sure they're housed and have access to meaningful employment and health care and housing, the number one thing we can do is make sure that people are pretty sure they're going to get caught. That is, the research for literally decades has shown us that the certainty of getting caught, this, being sure that you're going to be held accountable, is actually the most important thing in preventing crime. There's actually a correlation with longer prison sentences don't make us safer. It actually increases the chances that someone's going to of recidivism happening. We know that it's in the data, and so to that piece, I think that that should be where our focus is, and I think. The other thing I want to highlight is every single person who testified today talked about the need for more officers and the need for more staff. And one of those things is that, in my city, in Roseville, for example, they've started to hire the sort of embedded social worker model and to have more of that. What that actually does, it means that officers have more time to actually be doing the holding people accountable and actually doing the thing they were trained to do. if we don't have officers sort of doing the job of 16 different people, that actually is helpful for them in working up investigations, getting us that good information so that prosecutors like myself and Representative Moeller have a good case in front of us to actually hold people accountable. And that all gets to the prevention piece, because the certainty that you're going to be held accountable and that a case is going to be investigated, the evidence gathered, and the accountability there, that's actually how we stop crime. That's how we prevent crime. I know there's a lot of people a couple other people on the list, but the other thing I wanted to lift up, and I actually, I'm going to be honest, I don't know that I've ever written down a Brian Peters quote before, but we absolutely must have more officers to keep our communities safe. And I heard that from every single one of you said that. We're running short. We need help. There really is desperation in the statements today. So what if I told you there is a provision in front of us in the House bill that expands and improves the number of licensed peace officers, boots on the ground, doing the work, enforcing state law, and it will cost us nothing. It will cost Minnesota taxpayers nothing to get 29 more officers, licensed peace officers in the state of Minnesota enforcing state law. And that is the provision that would allow our licensed peace officers who are employed by the Leech Lake Tribal Police Department to enforce state law. There's no reason to not do that. It costs us nothing. And I know that it's in the House bill and it's not in the Senate bill, but I just kept, every single one of you that talked about the need for more officers, like, here's an answer right here. And it's not the guys, it's not the people who just finished, to what Commissioner Harrington spoke to. It's not people who just finished school. These are people with decades of experience. And actually, no offense to other folks, but the tribal police officers at Leech Lake actually receive more training above and beyond the bare minimum and above and beyond what your average peace officer does, because they work with the feds, they work on tribal drug enforcement task forces, they do the work. And so I really want to lift that up, because it seems like it doesn't solve everything, but it's the type of thing that's just good governing. It's good policy that costs Minnesota taxpayers nothing, but gets more cops enforcing state law in our state. And so I do also want to thank Commissioner Harrington and Chair Limmer. I know in the interim, you visited Leech Lake and got to speak with some of those officers and the chief of police, and got to see firsthand that they're good at what they do and they're well trained. And so as we talk about the importance of peace officers, those officers who are employed by Leech Lake, they work just as hard and they care just as much and they're just as well trained, and we should be lifting that up. And it's an easy way that we can help with this shortage of officers that we've heard about from every single person today. And so I hope as we continue discussions, that remains legitimately on the table, because it is really good policy and it gets us to the point where we are focused on prevention and holding folks accountable. And so I again, thank you, Chair Limmer, for visiting. I know there's an open invitation for you to visit again, particularly in the summer. It's whether it's for the fishing opener or ricing or whatever it is. But I do appreciate you taking the time to make that trip with Senator Eichhorn, and it's good policy, and I hope that remains on the table as we continue negotiations in this committee. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Becker-Finn, if you know of a couple more fishing holes that I could take advantage of, maybe we could come up there right away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure my uncles would approve of me sharing that, but I'll think about it.
It's always
Thank
the way
you.
it is. Senator Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have a couple things I want to share and ask a question or two. And first off, I want to just state that I do not accept the proposition that I heard that the Senate's position is only focused on more incarceration. Now, I want to be clear, I want to accurately characterize what was said by the commissioner. I try to be a real stickler for making sure that we're actually dealing with the actual arguments that we're making, and I'll get to more of that in a minute with one of my questions. But I want to remind the committee of what we stated earlier at a hearing in the Senate Judiciary Committee, where we highlighted, and I think it was clearly laid out by Judge Chu and the case that she oversaw earlier this year, that there are 4 reasons for having an incarceration sentence, having the consequences enforced on offenders. Punishment is one of them, removal from society is another one, rehabilitation is a third, and deterrence is a fourth. And those are all important factors. Now, the Senate's position is, yes, increasing our focus on incarceration, and the reason for that is because it seems to have been lacking. It seems that we are grossly underutilizing that leg of the stool, and the statistics are bearing it out. That Senator Osmick read from the very beginning. The numbers in prisons are going down, and the amount of violent crime on the street is going up. And there is very serious concern about the administration's goal to continue to peel back more and more sentences and try to continue using alternative forms. So that's a policy discussion that we're having here. But the fact that we're rising up and putting a more emphasis on punishment and on deterrence does not mean that we have decided to neglect the other pieces of the strategy of fighting crime. And I'm going to reject outright any semblance that we are. I mean, it goes back to, we're in a moment, we've heard the word crisis many times today, and we have to rise up and stop this crisis of violent crime that we're facing. Reminds me back to 2 years ago when after the murder of Mr. Floyd and the riots that followed, we needed to rise up and put a stop to that. And it took very serious action temporarily, but you can't let those kinds of riots continue on. It took the administration 4 or 5 days before there was an adequate response to that. There's no excuse for that on the second day, in my opinion, but that's a different subject altogether. But we're keeping in place other elements of the strategy in trying to fight crime, but we are pushing back on punishment and deterrence. We need more officers to do that. We heard testimony, we're down 500 officers right now, and we need more stringent penalties in place so that people stop committing violent crimes. And so, Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask if Mr. Peters would be available to come up, because a characterization was made. Senator Latz, I don't believe I heard Mr. Peters say what you said he had. And to your credit, I appreciate that you have made your position very clear that the defund the police movement that swept through the country to some has not and has ever been your position. And I am glad of that, but there are still elements afoot that are trying to do that. Minneapolis cut their police budget again last year, and I just read this morning that there's an individual on the committee to pick the new chief in St. Paul that has made very egregious comments against police, to even posting abolish the police. That's going to help pick who the new chief will be in St. Paul. And so while I'm glad that members on this committee have not been holding that position, our law enforcement are still having to deal with these types of anti-law enforcement sentiments on a regular basis. And the Senate position in this bill is to try to help fortify law enforcement to do what they need to do in order to help stem that off. And so, Mr. Chair, I'd like Mr. Peters, if you would clarify, I don't believe I heard you say that only police can evaluate police, but I'd like to give you a chance to explain if that's what you said or what your position is, and if you would clarify why you believe the funding for alternative nonprofits and organizations in the House bill is not as superior to the funding, the extra funding for recruiting and retaining law enforcement, and give you an opportunity to clarify your position.
Director Peters.
Thank you, Senator Limmer. Senator Matthews, I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to clarify, because I believe my comments were a little bit misconstrued. The proposal in the House is to create a civilian board authority to have subpoena power and discipline power, okay? Let's look at other boards like the boards that oversee attorneys' licenses, that review discipline. Let's look at a physician's board as well as teacher's board. Not one of them have a complete board made up of just citizens. And that's what this proposal is doing. I'm not against having a board made up of majority of police and civilians, but to have a civilian board, complete civilian board, with discipline and subpoena power, we don't agree with. I think it's an overreach, because they don't have necessarily the expertise and the training to make those decisions. And so that's what we are opposed to. And think about civilian review boards for smaller agencies. Are they able to even put one together? And what I struggle with the last 2 years with a lot of legislation that has come out of the House is we want to blanket the entire state of Minnesota in policing, a profession, like it's Minneapolis and St. Paul, and it just doesn't work. Many, many departments, the majority, vast majority of departments do things right. And I think creating legislation that blankets the entire state is just wrong.
Senator Matthews.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I appreciate that. That's a sentiment that law enforcement in my community shares with me regularly, that yes, we've had instances where bad actors in law enforcement have committed crimes, and those are terrible decisions that have had serious repercussions. We all know that. But they do not want to have their hands tied with broad sweeping legislation to solve problems that don't exist in our communities. So, Mr. Chair, I think the hearing that we've, in evaluating these two proposals, I believe that we do need to make more investments in our law enforcement. We need to help with the retention and recruitment of officers. That's been stated, that's a very, very clear issue. We've had officers in my district, in rural Minnesota, in small town police force that had a very recently hired recruit decide that being a new officer with a young family, he couldn't take the risk anymore. He decided it was best for him to get out of the profession and switch careers to somewhere else. And so the difficulty in hiring and attracting new law enforcement is happening all over the state of Minnesota. It's happening in my area. And so I appreciate what we've brought forward. I believe our Senate position is very strong. That's why we're here comparing these two. And I'll leave it at that, Mr. Chair.
Director Peters.
Chair Limmer, I think Senator Matthews, you kind of had a second question in there about my comments about violence interrupters program, and if possible, would like to speak to that as well.
Go ahead.
It's clear, from my position and Representative Mariani and I have had conversations about this, very good conversations. But it's clear when you look at the House bill, there's more funding for community response programs. And I just feel that that's not what is needed right now. Do I think it's important? Yes. Where I think it's important more so is having the municipalities, like Sheriff Fletcher, what he does of creating organizations within an organization that can help with that, but also letting the cities and Sheriff's Department have access to that money, because I believe strongly that they know who are the people that can help them in their area fix what needs to be fixed. Having it at the state level and having groups that just can apply for it and not having that accountability measure at the end of the day is concerning. It's a lot of taxpayer dollars, money that's going out, and I just think it could be better spent if you allowed the municipalities to have control of that and vet the community groups or co-responder models in there. And if you look at the House proposal, there's nothing law enforcement in there. There's no partnership with law enforcement. We list organizations or other state government entities, but not law enforcement. And if we're really looking at correcting the problem, shouldn't law enforcement and these groups be working hand in hand instead of one group doing something out on their own and law enforcement doing something else? I think there needs to be a direct connectivity because that is going to, in my opinion, in my members' opinion, solve quicker what we need to solve.
Senator Osmick, I had one, we're going to move on to another.
Only because it goes
Senator.
to that point.
All
I
right.
just had one quick question. So in your opinion, Mr. Peters, does it make more sense, rather than being so prescriptive with each one of these line items about all of the projects that the other body has been proposing, would it not make more sense, particularly from a local control aspect, to actually block grant it and let the police departments come up with the programs that best fit their jurisdiction and the problems that each of them are facing?
Director Peters.
Chair Limmer, simply Senator Osmick, 100% yes.
I'm going to move on to, thank you, Director, Chair Mariani.
Thank you. There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have several inquiries and questions. And yes, Sheriff Fletcher, I'm going to have you come down at some point. You don't have to do it right away, but I will. Members, just very quickly on that last inquiry, the House's answer to your question, Representative Osmick and perhaps, rather Senator Osmick and perhaps Senator Matthews, the House's answer to that is, yeah, that's what's in our bill. Block grants, collaboration, local decision-making, everything funneled through, whether it's community funding, whether it's law enforcement, supports and capacity building, everything funneled through local decision-making, where our city council members, our township members, our county commissioners are all making those decisions with one another. We heard loud and clear what public safety best research says about the importance of a number of issues, local control issues, so that we're having locals accommodate, tailor responses to local realities, collaboration across different jurisdictions, a lot of research, absolutely not true, by the way, that it's unproven that community interventions are not effective. Lots of research that shows that our best responses are is when you put all those tools together, and to the degree that you can have them working and coordinating with one another, even better. But the House has not proposed that the state is the one that makes that decision for our locals. What the House proposes is that the state sets up broad sets of expectations that are evidence-based, will create an infrastructure in order to measure and evaluate the wisdom of these appropriations. And then we transparently share that out with the broader public. And again, that we have our locals doing it. So, you know, I've had this debate in the House. I had it on the floor of the House, you know, expressed my, quite frankly, impatience with being asked to defend a bill that isn't before us. And whether it's Mr. Peters or anyone else, either read the bill, or stop with the divisive messaging. That's what Senator Latz's comments were in terms of the defund the police. You know what that does? First of all, it's not anywhere in this bill. Funding, dollar for dollar, law enforcement folks with community intervention, prevention specialists is not defunding anywhere. It's actually funding our public safety system. That's what it does. And the problem with the kind of rhetoric that gets tossed around here, quite frankly, recklessly, irresponsibly, and offensive to me, and apparently to others, is that all it does is it gets in the way of these 5 senators and these 5 representatives to get to where we need to get to, which is to get to yes. Which then means status quo, guess who's not going to get resources, guess what policy frames aren't going to go forward, guess what good programs are not going to happen, like the bipartisan Rarick-Noor employment pathway in corrections program. You got a rural, and I served with him, he's a I don't know why he went to the Senate, but I served with him, good representative. You got a rural white guy, with a Somali inner city guy coming together and saying, you know what, there are really smart ways for us to break these cycles of harm and violence. You don't have to be a Republican or a Democrat to see it. You just have to have the will to do it. And quite frankly, to my conferees here, we have to resist those who would come in here and try to break our will. Because when I hear that kind of language, that's what that attempts to do. That's not our job here. When we're on the campaign trail, perhaps, I could throw it like with the best of them, for sure. But we have a job to do right here, right now. And we have great opportunities. And what I hear is a heck of a lot of overlap. The chair himself on opening day, I think it was opening day, of our conference committee, threw out, the need to talk about intervention and prevention work. Why? I suspect because as conferees, we need to be here in this space to really listen to each other. And we really need to resist, the kind of divisive kind of practices that we just, witnessed earlier. It's really kind of a shame because, one of the things I wanted to ask, the head of the MPPOA was about the DTSIC provision, which provides for protection for rank and file members in our peace officer ranks to be protected by when they exercise that duty to intervene that we do require by law, and that I think virtually every law enforcement jurisdiction also asks and requires. And if you look back on the court cases that we've had this recent year, that was one of the issues of contention. It's like, gee, I don't know whether I can do this, quite honestly. It's one thing to have stuff that's technically on the books. It's another thing to have a culture, and a set of practices that actually encourage you to do what we should be doing and what the law requires us to do. And to put our rank and file peace officers in that horrible position, doing what they're required to do, what they know in their hearts should be done, but doggone it, if I do it, I'm going up against what? My supervisor, whatever, That's a great question for me to ask of the MPPOA, but you know what? I'm not going to ask their representative to come back up here because I don't want to hear the nonsense that we heard before. What I want to hear is practical problem solving. And I think that's what all of us here should want to hear and that we should stay focused on. All right, Sheriff Fletcher. My sheriff, by the way.
I knew we were going to get him down
You
here
knew
one more
that,
time.
yeah. So I do have several questions. Sheriff, you and I had a good, quick conversation coming in this morning. I look forward to us connecting tomorrow and over a good cup of coffee and for continuing that question. But just a few things very quick. One is, you've got your ambassadors here, is that right? And are these licensed peace officers? Maybe you could tell me just very quickly about what, who the ambassadors are.
Madam Chair, some of them are.
Sheriff Fletcher.
Mr. Chair, Chair Mariani, some of them are here, yes. We have 4 of them in the audience. Rev Spence is kind of the coordinator of the group.
Could they give us a wave to see who's in our,
and
there they are.
I don't mind bragging about these guys a little bit, if you're okay with that, because Andre Robinson, Andre, stand up there if you don't mind. David Lindsay, and Michi Curry. And these guys do amazing work out on the streets. And Rev, you can stand up as well. But the reason I want those other 3, 40 years ago, I chased all 3 of those guys around. And I didn't catch them very often, but once in a while we caught them. And we developed a professional relationship, if you want to call it that. But over time, all 3 of them have spent some time in prison, let's just be honest about it. But they are great members of society today, and they're contributing, and they do a lot of great work. And no, they are not licensed peace officers, and they are able to prevent crime in areas that we assign them and that disrupt crime without being licensed peace officers. But they also have a licensed peace officer that supervises them. And they work, their office is right inside our office, and they work with a number of other officers. For the State Fair, we had 20 of these ambassadors assigned to help at the Minnesota State Fair, and had a huge impact. So someday, if you want to meet or talk with them, they have a lot to say about what goes on in society. So
Yeah, thank you.
sit down,
Thank
gentlemen.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, gentlemen. And of course, Rev Spence and I go back,
Yes.
as well. I'm going to answer this question for you, which is, no, you're not defunding the police when you're spending public resources on these fine gentlemen to be part of our public safety responses. And kudos to you and kudos to the others that are doing it. It sounds like Ramsey County is doing it the way that works for them. It could be that Asante County will develop a different effort. I think our job is to make sure that we're providing the broad array of tools possible for you and sufficient resources for you to develop your own tools. And so, kudos to you. Really super quickly on your proposal for the collaborative. So the language in your bill has a July start. So that's part of the immediacy, issue. I note that in Representative Fraser's approach, similar approach, where he's got, a quick emergency, investment grant of $15 million. He's got a June start. So I guess my super quick question, don't make it long, please,
Sure.
is does a June start work for this kind of idea?
Just wanted to remind, we still have 2 senators that wanted to participate in the discussion, so.
Mr. Chair, yes, the June
Sheriff
start
Fletcher.
works. Actually, on enactment would work, I think, best
Okay.
for any bill.
Okay, Mr. Chair and Sheriff, what's been the response of the other counties and jurisdictions to this idea? Are you still recruiting support? Is there interest? Is there support? Again, very quickly, please.
Sheriff Fletcher.
I'm confident there would be 20 agencies that want to participate with us in addressing carjackings.
Okay, thank you, Sheriff. I really appreciate
Chair
it.
Mariani.
Mr. Chair, I'll try to move very quickly here. I do want to, on the corrections issue, because I want to watch the time, I'm not going to ask the commissioner to come down, although I ideally would. I do think that part of what the commissioner, a large part of what the commissioner is advising and responding to inquiries here and in terms of his concern about the Senate approach is that it's really tough and not effective to focus super heavy, on creating a ton of new, essentially what will be a ton of new beds in the state and, at a big cost. At the same time that we're not making the kind of investments like the Office of Legislative Auditors points to in terms of our technical infrastructure, like not investing in the community support programs that's either part of his department or DPS's or anywhere else for that matter, including, not doing a huge intervention of what a job does for folks, which is it keeps people focused on what they ought to be focused on, as opposed to repeating and working off of the past habits. And so I think there's a really big holistic message here. And I think that's our opportunity here, Mr. Chair, that as we exchange and try to meet in a common, place, that we're not so heavily, tilting one way, or another. I do think also that it's critically important, we haven't talked a whole lot about this, we will next week when we have the gavel again, if we don't before then, but the community supervision work is just critically important for a whole host of reasons. And I think what I'll be asking, when we get back together then to have that very, focused conversation, really has to do around urgency, because I'm suspecting that unless we're doing something now, we're putting off, for at least a couple of years. Because, startup stuff is pretty, we throw a bunch of money at counties, into the existing formula. We can agree to disagree about whether it's good, but here's what I know, from a management perspective, is we then lock into all sorts of behaviors. We lock into hires, we lock into infrastructure, data collection, et cetera, under the current system as opposed to moving a whole system. And so I really am looking forward, to that conversation. Then finally, Mr. Chair, our Commissioner Harrington, Commissioner, I have so many questions for you, but I doubt we're going to have the time to do that. But I do just want to lift up several things. One is that, first of all, I like the framework you gave us because it is about all those things together. See, he wants his exercise, Mr. Chair. He came down. So he wants all those things, to happen.
We still want to honor our two senators with questions.
Indeed. And so I like the framework of, hey, we should invest in the future, but you know what? The future means at best, you're going to have 3 years down the line before you have your maximum, impact. It's important to do. At the same time, there's training opportunities that could be happening now, and there's absolutely prevention and intervention work that we can begin to do now. So let me just ask one question, because that's all I'm going to have time for, Commissioner, which is there's been some, concern around nonprofits and, sending money, to nonprofits. Of course, the House bill doesn't do that. The House bill sends it to local electeds to make decisions about where they can best invest. And then there's some carving out in terms of, hey, make sure you do invest, in community, make sure you do invest in law enforcement. So there's several streams to be able to do that. And Representative Frazier spoke to this yesterday about the incredible layers of accountability that are far and above beyond what we currently have in state statute through OJP requirements for accountability for those groups, for those community-based groups. And I absolutely agree with everyone, including, again, with MPPO and Mr. Peters, that there ought to be accountability. Accountability should be agnostic, especially when it comes to state resource dollars. So my quick question to you then is, tell us about the capacity of the Department of Public Safety to ensure that there will be strong accountability in terms of the flow of those dollars to community-based centered efforts and those hybrids. So tell us about the capacity and tell us about the will for you as a commissioner and for the department in general relative to that. And then I'll leave it at that for questions.
Well, we have about 3.5 minutes left.
I can be
Chair
brief, sir.
Mariani asked a very involved question, and we still have 2 reps that I want to honor.
I can be brief, Senator Limmer.
All right. Go ahead,
It's your
Commissioner.
pleasure, sir. Chair Limmer, Chair Mariani, the Department of Public Safety, and in particular OJP, which is Kate Weeks is sitting here in the audience also, is absolutely committed to doing both, to empowering community, but at the same time making sure that we are doing our due diligence to ensure that public dollars, when they go out the door, are being put out the door for a good purpose, and that that purpose is being met. And I'll give you 2 quick examples of that. So we have the community compact dollars that we have pushed out from last year. That was a process that we worked with the YWCA in North Minneapolis to create them as the fiscal agent. We trained them. We have offered continual training with them to make sure that they and the recipients of those dollars all know what the federal regulations are, because that was ARPA money, so we needed to make sure that they knew not only what the state regs were, but what the federal regs were. Because of that, we are also able to chart what they're doing. A lot of it is process charting right now in terms of where they're working, what areas, what locations. But we can then overlay that work on the information I'm getting from Charlie Adams, the inspector in the 4th precinct, to say, this is the hotspot area that they're working on, and this is where the community dollars are being spent to address community violence concerns. And so we can see from merging those 2 pieces of information that the dollars are being spent in the right place, and because of the really good work that our OJP folks do, that it's being done in the right way. We have asked in our legislation to make sure that we continue to get grant administrators so that we can make sure that as the money increases, that we have enough people to do the technical assistance, the training, and the oversight that's necessary to make sure that the dollars are going where they're said to be gone.
I know that the Senate is going to be going into session at noon. We don't always, the Senate doesn't always have a tradition of following the time. But Representative Johnson, you were on our list. Would you want to make any comments? And then we'll give Representative Mueller a final word.
If I could have a couple of comments while Commissioner Schnell would come up. I do have a question for him regarding the House bill. First of all, I would like to thank the ambassadors that are here. Thank you for the great work you do. I've seen it in person. I don't know if you are aware of that, but watching you work and watching how you handle the crowds and the individuals is fantastic. So thank you for your work.
Representative Johnson, could you pull that microphone real close? Thank you.
I'd also want to mention that unfortunately in the House bill, there's two issues that I don't think Representative Mariani is aware of. First of all, that $55 million grants for these that's in the bill dealing with violence interrupters or whatever they're called. On line 81, I'm going to pull it up again. It's on line 81. I just had it here, and of course it goes away when you don't want it to. Line 81.11, it states grant funds may not be used to fund the activities of law enforcement agencies. And for these programs to work, they need to work with law enforcement agencies. So that's a problem there. But I do have a question for Commissioner Schnell, reference the budget item. In the House bill, it removes $7 million out of the MnCOR fund. And my understanding, that almost wipes that fund out. The MnCOR program is a great program, teaching some skills to some of the inmates. It gives them an opportunity to actually do some work. Years ago, they made Minnesota equipment. Some of the best farm equipment out there were trailers, wagon carriages, and gravity boxes. I still have a number of them on my brother-in-law's farm. I wish you were making them again, because a lot of people do. But with that $7 million coming out of the MnCOR fund, what will that do to that program?
Commissioner Schnell.
Mr. Chair, Representative Johnson, that $7 million, this is really, I think it's important for everybody to understand. MinCorp is essentially an enterprise that has to be self-supporting. And we're allowed to have dollars in reserve, and reserves are important because during the pandemic, there were months when we were losing $1 million per month. And it employs a lot of people, and as you point out, it provides incredible job skill opportunities for people. And so that $7 million would have a devastating impact on the operations of MinCorp, because we do see fluctuations in revenue flow for the work that gets done by people inside.
Is that all? Okay. Representative Mueller, you've been very patient. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm well aware that I'm keeping people from lunch, so I'll be even faster. I just had a couple of quick comments here. One thing that we heard Commissioner Harrington say, that this crime problem is a statewide problem, and I just wanted to point out also that this is a nationwide problem. And some of the states with the highest crime rates, like Mississippi and Louisiana, are also the states who have the highest rate of incarceration. So it's simply inaccurate to say that Minnesota's current incarceration rate is to blame for the increase in crime. We also heard a lot of anecdotal information about gun cases, but we didn't really hear anything about access to guns by people who shouldn't have them. Gun violence has been rising across the country since 2014. If you look at the Violence Free Minnesota's report, 30-year report on domestic violence, fatal incidents, gun access, gun violence is again a large cause of that. They support studies that access to firearms by an abuser can significantly increase the risk of lethality. So I guess two things that I'd like to point out. One is it's past time that we address access to firearms, and I hope that our law enforcement partners in the future will start including this in their proposals to us. It is part of the puzzle. It's an important part of the puzzle, and we need to hear from you about that. Also, victim services. Thank you so much to Commissioner Harrington for lifting up the fact that we have a lot of domestic violence on the increase. I know he has been a strong advocate for that. I remember him in 2019 testifying about domestic violence cases, and it's really important that we fund victim services this year as well. With that, I'm finished. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Mueller. In closing, I just wanted to first ask Chair Mariani, when will be our next time to meet, and what we should be expecting. I think it's on Monday. As I mentioned before, a number of members on this committee are obligated to be at a convention this weekend, and so there'll be a little gap, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to be thinking and talking about it. I know that Chair Mariani and I have talked about making contact with one another over this weekend. And one request I would like to ask of Chair Mariani is to hope we could have an agenda ahead of time so that our full caucus would know what's on the things to talk about next time we meet.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Limmer. We, of course, do have the gavel. Tomorrow we're slotted to meet. It's going to be awfully difficult to meet if we don't have a quorum. And so I'm trying to figure out what's a good way to use our time, perhaps engaging with the public, just talking about some of the issues in the, proposals that we may not have time to get to. But obviously, if we can't have the Senate here, then, we're not going to be able to formally take any kind of actions. We would look to the next time we have a gavel with a quorum to focus on the DLC in particular, and community corrections, even community corrections funding and policy opportunities in particular. And so maybe that happens on Monday. So I'll be sure to keep you posted and to keep the public posted. Absolutely. We'll get an agenda out as soon as possible. We will, oh shoot, there was something else I was going to add to that. Oh, I was just also want to acknowledge that, the chair and I have been chatting about making sure that we roll up our sleeves, as chairs, and and have some good conversations this weekend. I know you're going to be hard pressed, with, driving through some pretty tough weather to get to a pretty important, event in our state, but hopefully you and I can carve out some really good time over the weekend and do some shaping up as we enter into our last week here. So thank you for a very good hearing today, Chair Limmer.
I think we covered a lot of ground. I think we recognized some common points. And those that were testifiers made sure we realized what their concerns and priorities were. So having said that, we now stand adjourned. Thank you.